said, we're going to start the February 13th meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. You're all set, right?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Gronk's a big guy, huh? Gronk is a big guy.
Yeah.
Approval of minutes, if they've been reviewed and read, look for a motion.
Move to approve the minutes of January 23rd, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Second order of business, small project, NACC number 228, 534 Boston Street.
So you have a fairly nice, oh, yeah, you can just come sit in so they can hear you. Presentation in front of you for a tree removal project, a small portion of which is sort of right on the edge of the buffer zone and in the no disturbance zone, the majority of which is beyond the 25 feet and some of which is entirely outside of the buffer zone. Given the number of trees that were proposed for removal, I thought that we should present this to you rather than some sort of administrative approval. If you just looking at the map in front of you, trees 1 and 2 are both hazards. One overhangs the house, correct, and the other overhangs the power lines. Trees 3 and 4 are very large white pines with some insect damage at the base. Trees 5 and 6, I think the contractor is more recommending, based on the age of these very large pines, that while he's there, it might be prudent to do removal of those as well. Tree number 7 is a completely dead sort of snag that does still have some branching at the top. So for that one, I was recommending that he just top it so that the rest of the snag is there for habitat purposes. And the remainder of the trees are completely out of your jurisdiction in the backyard and back by his septic system. And then you have some nice photos. I did meet out there and, you know, we reviewed everything, and I think as everything is described is completely accurate. And the only thing I would recommend, just based on the number again that are coming out around the wetland, that maybe there be some replanting. If there's anything you want to add to that for them?
Yes, we do plan on doing some replanting, especially up where the 5 and 6 and the 4 are. If anything, just for privacy from the street, but not no intention for like landscape type plantings, but just to fill in what was taken to make it look natural.
Joe?
If there was ever a private forest management plan of it that would be worth approving, this is it. This is the best one I've seen. I have no questions.
No questions.
No, one looking at the, the construction accesses, I'm curious, but now that I see the pictures, like, they seem fine, it seems fine to me. I have no questions.
The only thing I would like to ask, there are 7 trees that you want to remove?
No, 13.
Oh, 13, okay,
The whole
because,
bit. The ones up now are the ones in the backyard that are out of jurisdiction.
okay. So the ones, yeah, and then those are going to be gone as well because of the carpenter ant destruction on those trees?
Yeah, and they're large, they're around his septic system, lots of reasons, I think, back there, but also not really our, it's a very wooded lot, let's put it that way.
Okay.
None of the tree removal is for like making space. Every tree is either, you know, dead or diseased or damaged, or I'm worried about it, you know, damaging the house or the neighbor's house. So we don't have any plans to do, you know, this isn't going to clear up any space for any other kind of expansion or activity or anything. We don't have any plans to improve, you know, make other improvements to the lot, you know, because of this.
You just want to get rid of the trees that are either diseased or are hazardous.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
Doug, I'll come back to Sean.
I'll abstain from the vote.
It's only a small project. Okay, motion?
So I recommend that it be a small project L, because I think it goes a little beyond the pruning one, which is just the other category, with requirements for replanting of native species. I would recommend 4 to 6 shrubs at the applicant's discretion, and then a post-construction inspection with, no machinery in the wetlands and no impact to surrounding trees.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
I think we need to.
So that's an L with,
We-
and approved
we-
with conditions. I guess it's usually
Yeah,
2
We
votes.
have to classify it.
Right.
We have to agree that it's an L, move it accordingly, and then approve it. It requires 2 motions.
Okay, so the second motion would be,
To approve it as proposed with the conditions.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You're all set, thank you.
With one abstention on both.
You got one abstention.
Okay, I'll write that up and get it out to you. Thanks.
The next one is an RDA for 492 Sutton Street. It's a Lawrence Airport, so I have to recuse myself. So Al, and they're gonna put that one. Yeah, that's the next one, first one. And this,
492 Sutton,
yeah, and this one, where are we here? Right here.
Randy's got a lot of traveling to do,
business.
so I recommended
Partial
that you hear
COC
them
request.
together.
Under general business.
Yes, those two are gonna be heard at the same time.
Okay, I got you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll hear both the IDA and under general business, 2421672, the partial COC request for 492 Sutton Street. Both of those items we heard at the first time, at the same time. Randy? Good
Evening, Al, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good,
You're
good,
up.
thanks. The RDA is first. Quick history behind that. Back in 2006, this commission approved a vegetation management plan for the Lawrence Airport, a process we delved into together, and it was a very large project. It was the first time a whole-scale clearing of the airport had been completed, and it was quite an undertaking. And back here tonight, we received a certificate of compliance for that original project. I'm back here tonight doing a request for determination so we can continue maintenance of the areas that were cleared under that 2006 vegetation management plan. Referring to this document as a yearly operational plan. You may have heard that term when you deal with utility right-of-ways. The laws and regulations that pertain to vegetation maintenance, yearly operational plans actually comes out of the utility right-of-way regs in Massachusetts. So there's a lot of similarities between the two documents. I brought up this request for determination, I think it was last season. We had seen some Mass DOT funding that was available to the airport to complete year 1 of the maintenance. And that funding has remained available. And so in discussing the appropriate level of filing for vegetation maintenance, worked with your staff and filed the RDA in support of getting permission to do this maintenance out at the airport. All the maintenance is within previously approved vegetation management areas. Layout will be provided by Stantec, and there is full-time resident inspection by Stantec of the selected contractor for this work. There's about 16 acres of herbicide application. We also have some heavy mowing in the uplands as well, and then some selective hand clearing of saplings in some wetland, just under 3 acres on that. So the plan that you see before you is year 1 of the yearly operational plan. And over the 5 years of the maintenance plan, we plan to do most of the areas that were covered under that original vegetation management plan. And so
Correct that this is just for year 1?
this is just for year 1 because we have funding availability. This is to address year 1 of that plan, and that's it.
So what you see in front of you now is the 5-year plan, correct?
That would be all of the maintenance we would propose over the 5 years. And then the subset of that is this plan, which is what we are proposing to complete with MassDOT funding. All this work would be completed prior to June 30th of this year, which is the end of the fiscal year for MassDOT. So we'd be looking for appropriate conditions between now and June 30th.
How would you come back if, for the rest of it? And-
Because we have to see what Mike can afford next year, and we would come back once we identify how much maintenance he can actually afford in coming years. So that's what's going to guide it.
Right, and you were talking too about how there's new DEP guidance on how these things can be sort of permitted like YOPs as well.
That is correct. They explain how the vegetation management plan process was, it's a big permitting effort for both conservation commissions and the airports. And what they wanted to do was make sure you went through the notice of intent process for that, but then get the maintenance approved during that process, come back, coordinate with conservation commissions for the maintenance, but not have to file reoccurring notices of intent unless you have to clear outside of those previously approved areas. And so all the lines that you see here, all the shaded areas, are within previously approved vegetation management areas from the 2006 overall document. You will see we've changed this plan a little bit to reflect the recent Runway 523 project. You'll see the red hatch at both the 5 and 2-3 ends. That is where the toes of slope have expanded to accommodate the new safety areas out there. They did eat into previously managed areas, and so that's reflected on this revised plan.
So for, while you're all looking at the plan, for conditions, sort of going back to the way you had conditioned the, I mean, there was a lot of conditions in monitoring, and I think those can sort of be simplified into, you know, a post-cutting treatment inspection with notification prior to the start of any components of whether it's the mowing or the herbicide or whichever you're, whether they start concurrently or in different phases. And then, you know, the document that they submitted is fairly detailed as to the processes that they'll use and under what conditions and how they'll remove slash and where, how they'll do chipping and everything. So strict compliance with the standards that they've submitted and practices outlined in the YOP. So sort of 3 conditions: notification of what's going to occur and when, which gives us the chance maybe to even meet if we need to, or 2, you know, strict compliance with what they proposed, and 3, post-cutting treatment inspections, where I love to take rides with Randy out at the airport.
Yeah, I actually fixated exactly on those 2 runway safety zone area expansions. So what you said, I think, was that these areas prior to the expansion were already in the vegetation management plan, but because we expanded the runways for safety reasons, the vegetation management didn't expand any further.
No.
So we're still within those confines, it's just, they just look a little different.
Yeah, those grassed areas are now either riprap or they're grass slope, so they won't need any maintenance beyond standard lawn mowing in the future. And so I wanted to make sure it was clear they were out of the plan.
Got it. From the time that the vegetation management plan was first filed and approved by us, technology's changed somewhat with regards to use of herbicides. What are you using now compared to then?
Exactly. Before we did foliar application, which is kind of a high broadcast on the wind type application. What we're actually doing now is there's a couple ways we deliver it. We either take a 3/8 inch drill, we make a small hole about chest high in the tree, and we just fill that void. There's no waste, no spill, no nothing.
No overspray.
Yeah. The other one is that we use a hatchet, and it opens up a temporary wedge. And the things we're applying it to are just second growth poplar. So we're looking at 3-inch, 4-inch DBH regrowth more than anything else. The wedge opens up a temporary gap in the tree. They fill that little wedge with herbicide, and by the end of the day, that gap closes up. That's why we don't use chainsaws, because it actually moves wood and it becomes a permanent gap. It actually closes up. The herbicide is totally contained within the target, and it kills it, pretty readily. So we've managed to reduce volume significantly. Non-target mortality, non-target receipt of the herbicide has been completely eliminated by this hack and squirt technique, and you'll see that described in our YOP update. So that's the biggest advance, I guess, to the maintenance that we're practicing here, is the real limited volumes and high target specificity compared to the foliar application, which we had done in the original maintenance plan for the VMP.
Excellent. The mowing practices in those, I guess, the green and purple areas.
It would be those yellow areas only
yellow,
would be
I'm
the
sorry.
mowing, correct?
Okay, and, where's that near? That's over by Osgood Street, okay, back into Holt Road. Understood, we're all set, I'm all set, thank you.
So I'd like to follow up with what Joe was touching on. In 2006, I know you remember,
I do,
the initial introduction to this was a massive cutting
yes.
and a shrub conversion project that was new and sort of radical in this field. And that was, you were very much behind it. So I'm interested in the progress update since it's been since '06. The area that you converted by I'm going to say clear cut,
Yeah.
and then converted to a shrub conversion to prevent the height in the approach areas. How did that work? How many trees in the area that you converted have come back up and are in the potential
So
approach?
for example, the green areas you see there are really the green and the purple are the wetland vegetation management areas that were basically clear cut as part of the 2006 vegetation management plan.
Yeah.
What we then did is we went back 4 straight years and we controlled the stump regrowth. And if you've seen stump regrowth, it has a full mature tree root system with which to feed on, sends out those feeders, and they grow 5, 6, 7 feet a year because they have so much root system with which to support their annual growth. So we went back for 4 straight years and treated the stump regrowth, the oaks and the maples more than anything else. And we were very successful in killing those stumps. We weren't getting stump regrowth anymore. What we're after now is the new seeding by poplars, so stuff that wasn't around to treat back in our original maintenance years. They have since seeded in, and we have almost 100% poplar regrowth in these areas among all the shrubs that remain in these wetlands. So this is a regular maintenance to go back in and hit new growth, but it's very much smaller stuff. It's not the 10, 12, 14-inch DBH trees that we were hitting back in 2006. So as far as success in creating a self-sustaining shrub wetland, I think we did pretty well by controlling the whole scale stump regrowth. So it did not grow back into a wooded swamp like it was before. However, we are seeing residual seeding by other tree species that we are going to have to periodic control. And this is a prime example of that. Here we are, 2019. Last treatment was around 2010. So here we are 9 years later, having to go back into these areas and hit new seedlings. But the shrubs are, I mean, you can barely walk through the area. The shrubs are so dense, so we have a good vegetative cover in there. In addition to that, we hit invasive shrub species as a part of our herbicide. That was kind of our mitigation for you allowing us to use herbicide. We were going to hit invasive shrubs as well. Buckthorn is alive and well on this site. It's alive and well on all our boundaries of this site. But we did gain some control, but we were not able to eradicate buckthorn, which is our main problematic invasive wetland shrub that we're dealing with Lawrence Airport. So that was only limited success with the invasive shrub control.
So the shrub population, the canopy has been able to choke out the majority of the tree regeneration?
No doubt about it, no doubt. The shrubs are that dense that tree seedlings are having a tough time getting a foothold in there.
Just to follow up on that, are we seeing any introduction of other invasives coming in besides what was
You know what
already
I've seen, not just here, but I've seen over the past 5 years, and I don't know if you've noticed it, I didn't see Russian olive or autumn olive on these sites
Everywhere.
back in 2006. I can't believe how much olive there is now. Not just the airport, it is on the airport, but this whole region. I do work at Hanscom as well, and I had none. I've been working there since 1995. We had zero olive on the site back then, and now it's getting to be not as prevalent as buckthorn, but it is a tough species to eradicate, and we're seeing it very common now. So the answer to that is yes. We have seen olive get on this site since that time. It was not there in 2006.
So scar and treat is target application, so any tangential benefit of getting other invasives we're not going to get this time around because of that.
So we can do a frill and inject on shrubs. You did it right. It's called a basal treatment. You can get it right down at the base with one good hatchet whack, and you can get large scale invasive shrubs. You can't hit the little whips. It just
Right.
doesn't work. But if you get one with a good base like olive is known to occur, yeah, you can hit it with this technique.
I don't want to be overly restrictive. I'd like to see continuation of the cooperative evasive control measures that you guys and us are employing. So I'd like to go after some of those if we could.
So the large seed producers of both buckthorn and particularly olive, yeah. And these crews, the ones that I work with, of the two companies that might get this contract, they've all done this for me before, so it won't be new to them.
Okay.
About how many trees will be treated with this hack and spore technique?
So this will be, I guess we'd define them as saplings. I don't think they've quite reached, we usually use 5 dBH as a cutoff for tree versus sapling. But in the green areas at the 2-3 end, we will have at least 300, 400 targets at the 2-3 end, much less. If we have 100 targets at the 5 end, I'd be surprised. So less than 100 at the 5 end, between 300 and 400 at the 2-3 end. And each target gets about 5 milliliters of product, of herbicide product.
Okay, and once this is injected into the tree, how long does it take for it to die?
So we do it before leaf on, and so what we see is a very sickly leaf generation the first growing season, and then no leaf generation the second growing season. I did this a couple hundred acres worth last winter at 2 different airports, and that's what I saw at those 2 airports is a lot of immediate kill. The ones that did leaf out the first growing season will not come back the second growing season. We don't have to use surfactant here because we don't need stickiness, because it's wholly contained in the wound itself. So we can avoid using surfactants. It's a glyphosate, one of the commercial brands of Rodeo. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No questions.
Okay, Jen, any special requests, or?
No, just the 3 I talked about, notification, strict compliance with the protocols, and post-construction inspection, or post-treatment inspections.
Okay, so that would be what you call the ride around the airport?
Yeah, so this is it needs to be we just go to all the areas, and, we've been doing this for eons now with all the runway expansions, so get to learn airport protocol. And it's a negative number 2 and a negative number 3 because there is work in resource area.
Very good. You ready for a motion? Any other questions from the commission? We're ready to move it.
You have somebody in the audience, I think.
Pardon?
You have somebody in the
Oh,
gallery?
Come on up. If you don't mind, what we'd ask you to do is have a seat and just identify yourself, because we're being recorded, and that way the record is complete.
Okay, my name is Kalen Harold. I live at 25 Matthews Way. It's a new community that just got built. A few questions I did have, probably you'll be able to answer it for me. I just wanted to know how safe it is for both animals and kids, the pesticide that's going to be added. That's the first thing. And the second one is how are the communities around the area will be notified when those are being done.
So we don't have any pre-spray notification because this is a very contained application. As I was explaining to the commission, we used to do with backpack blowers where we'd introduce the herbicide into, you've seen the backpack leaf blowers, right? They have specialized ones where you actually put the solution into that wind and it coats the leaves of the targets, the target vegetation. And that's a lot more visible and a lot more escaping, for lack of a better term. What we're doing this time is in leaf-off condition, we're actually drilling holes into the tree, 1 or 2 depending on the size, and just filling up that hole. There's no leak over the side. It goes right into the injection point itself. And so we don't have any runoff. Even if it rains, when we do this, the wounds typically close up and you get no spillage or anything like that over the side. So it is completely safe for the volumes that we use and the way that we're introducing it. It can't come in contact with anyone. First of all, it all is occurring inside the perimeter security fence of the airport, number 1. And number 2, we are not broadcasting it freely like we did with the foliar type application. The MSDS sheet on glyphosate is a well-known product. We've been using it for quite some time. There is some news coming out of California, which is starting to question that. But the MSDS sheet that is acceptable by the state of Massachusetts right now, in fact, they recommend glyphosate as a herbicide that's acceptable use in wetlands and even in watersheds of a drinking water supply. And so at least the state of Massachusetts in the material safety data sheet, they call it something else now, MS. They've changed the name, but thank you. So the current sheet of it, very low toxicity, and the half-life of glyphosate is what I like the best. It's usually about a 48-hour half-life, and it breaks down to CO2 and water. So it's not a very persistent chemical because of the fast, rapid breakdown if it remains in the company of oxygen. Once it gets into an unoxygenated environment, the half-life goes up considerably. So here, where we're putting it high up in the tree and it's staying in the oxygenated part of the tree, we expect that half-life, that 48-hour half-life, to persist. So I don't have any concerns about it, and I've been using it for quite some time. And again, I think the method that we're employing here is safe for the wildlife, the wetlands, and certainly for the abutters to the airport as well. We don't have any plan to notify abutters, although I could talk to Mike about putting something on the airport website the date that we're supposed to. I just don't know how many people check the website. The mass mailings tend to cause a little bit of concern. I'm very hesitant to do that to all the abutters of the airport since it's such a big list. So I don't know if you have a if you have an idea, I can run by the airport manager, but we didn't have a plan to do that.
Okay. I know they asked, from the notice we received, there's a possibility people might come and cut some trees around the area because that's one of the lending areas.
There's one tree on the Matthews Way development, correct?
Okay, so
And none of this treatment is occurring on Matthews Way at all.
Okay, all right. That's one of the things that I would probably want us in the Matthews Way area to know about. Is just if they are coming to cut trees around there, they will let us know. Just so we could know that, okay, that's what they're doing here.
So the airport manager knows your developer real well.
Okay.
I guess they're on a first name basis. I forget his name, but I can talk to Mike about letting him know. Are you still in touch with your developer?
No,
You're not.
all the condos have been sold, so we have
Okay.
our own organization.
Oh, you
So
do?
I could probably just give you.
All
They
right.
have their own, do you have a homeowners
We
association?
do.
So maybe we could get the
Why don't we
contact
do
for
that?
that.
Just
Well,
contact the
I'll give you
homeowners
my-
association. They can contact all you individually.
Yeah, I'll give you my information and you could send me
Fantastic.
an email.
Are
and
you
I'll
on the
just-
homeowners association?
I am.
Okay. Nope, that's great conduit to have, so.
Brady, you didn't mention it, but I think it's worth saying that, processes like these require certification and licensing, so you're going to be only getting people out there who are skilled and certified to do this type of work. You're not going to get general labor, or just general maintenance or lawn care people applying this stuff. It's regulated and it's done properly with reporting at the end.
Yes. The volumes used are reportable at the end of the project.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? Any abutters? Okay, I know no others. I think we're ready for a motion at this time.
So
The-
a negative
Jen's
determination.
looking for a -2 and 3.
Yep. With conditions for notification, I've forgotten what they are. Notification, sort of compliance with the protocols and post-construction.
And that the applicant provide the administrator with targeted shrub
Oh,
growth,
the, invasive,
targeted
yeah.
invasives, just as, basically as a demonstration area.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that would be unanimous. Thank you all. And with one abstention for the record. Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
So we have,
Also, now Randy, we're not done with you, I guess. General business, 2421672. It's a partial COC request for 492 Sutton Street, Lawrence Municipal Airport.
Quick introduction to that. We've had a substantial completion of the project. Construction is complete. Reseeding, which was one of the punch list items of a few bare areas, was completed last fall. And so the contractor actually is off of the site All of the created paved surfaces and safety areas are in use, and everything is a go out there. We had a very friendly construction season, including over last winter. We only had to delay about 2.5 months, and we were able to achieve complete stabilization of the site by October of this past growing season. The reason for the partial certificate of compliance are twofold, might be threefold after this discussion. First of all, the relocated stream channel, which was one of my mitigation designs. I've been introducing the water into it very slowly. I didn't want to introduce it all at once. I wanted to keep a base flow in there, but if we get these real gully washers, which we tend to get these days, I didn't want this newly graded and newly planted relocated stream of 400 plus feet of channel to receive one of those gully washers while it was still, the root systems of the planted shrubs and things like that were still taking effect. So that low flow bypass is still in effect where high gully washer flows are still going through the bypass pipe. I wanted to give it a full nether growing season before we completely dumped all of the water into that channel. If I have the, I guess, the relief to do that, I feel best about getting more of those shrub root systems growing in there before we introduce it to, some of the rain that we've been getting has just been ridiculous, and that is a very flashy system there. So I want to give it this growing season to grow in a little bit more. So that work, that shift of the complete flows from the temporary bypass pipe to the relocated channel still needs to occur out there. We've completed 2 of the 5 years of the wetland replication monitoring. The second year end of season report showed us to be a complete success relative to vegetation and hydrology. I have no concerns about it, but the order of conditions does say 5 years worth of post-construction monitoring, and you only have 2 full sets of reports at the present time. And so that remains out there. And also some of the patches that we hydroseeded late last year as part of the punch list items have not completely grown in yet, and they'll need this growing season to create that real good dense turf layer necessary to call it completely stable in those overseeded areas. And where those overseeded areas occur is where the only erosion control remains on the site. I thought it best to leave some of these areas with the erosion control in while we achieve stabilization of the final seeded areas. So what we're asking for tonight was a partial release of the certificate of compliance, trying to get Mike and the airport management some of their bond money back, but while leaving enough there to address the final work that needs to be done, which is that return of the flow to the stream relocation. And that's it. That's a good summary, Jennifer. And
My concern with this, and we've encountered it before, is that the airport doesn't do full as-builts in the method in which we're required. And sort of in my discussions with Randy, I don't think it's their fault. It's sort of the way they do work. The problem is that's what we specified in the order of conditions, that we get full as-built of the property. So what I've put in front of you is sort of a conglomeration of the things we've received. The final monitoring report, I think, which Randy, you included like all of the monitoring. So basically I was able to print that out, and it's all the monitoring reports for the replication area. We do have an as-built of the replication area because it very specifically called out when it was constructed that we needed all the elevations to be surveyed. So we do have that. The plans that I'm showing you are spot grades that Randy has of all the runway areas. Those probably aren't the areas of most concern to the commission, but there's no sort of, new plan to lay over the old plan. Nothing like that. It's sort of a markup in where there's deviations. I think for the most part, the runway construction, I'd be fine leaving to the airport. I'm sure it's much more in their best interest to know that what they have constructed is spot on and, safe for driving planes on. I'm more concerned about the environmental aspect of the project. So I think you would want to see an as-built of the stream relocation area, both for, width of the channel, the slope of the channel, the features that were added to the channel, that sort of detail. That's my opinion. I mean, if you, the other thing that you do, and I guess Randy and I didn't have the discussion, is I don't know that there needs to be a certificate of compliance of any kind. We do bond releases all the time, so whether you feel comfortable issuing any kind of certificate of compliance or you want to wait to the end of the project. They have applied for their one-year extension since they need to keep this going for 5 years, and they're only in year 3. So
So I'm gonna, I have an opinion on that, but let's
Okay.
start at the beginning of the table, work our way down, and then I'll go last.
I'd love to hear your opinion.
Well, my opinion then, if you want to hear it, is very simple. I think a partial certificate of any kind is very inappropriate at this time. If the applicant wants to request some sort of bond release, they're free to do that, and we can rule on that. We can listen and find facts and make a decision. But anything that says compliance in any way, shape, or form ought not to come from this commission for any portion of this project until it's done. A partial could imply a full bond release. And I don't want to go down that road. I don't think we should go down that road. This is the work, Randy, this work was at the end of runway 5, right?
Yes.
That was,
More than that, though. It was
5 and 2, 3,
5 and
but
2,
5
3.
was the majority.
Well,
of
I
it.
know, but-
Shoulders on either side of the runway.
but the stream work was at that
5
end.
correct.
It's a very steep grade there.
Yep.
That was a big ticket item for me personally, that stream work. And as I said, we're going to go down the table here, but we should talk about it and review it and consider it only as a partial bond release, if that's appropriate. And I'm not saying that is, but I think that any type of certificate, a partial certificate, I wouldn't vote for. I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for a bond release. I haven't heard enough yet, but I wouldn't consider a partial certificate at this time. That's just my humble opinion. And with that, I'd like to
Probably saved 20 minutes, because I would have said that thing like probably the exact same way, 10 different ways.
Okay, so
So
let's
I
agree to move on.
I agree, and I don't think there was anything suspicious being requested. I think it was just a vehicle that might have been available they were considering. I 100% agree that we often and almost completely use the partial as a representative for a single element as part of a bigger subdivision or bigger project, and we only do it specific to that element. And I don't think this equates to that. This is a different type of project. So I completely agree with that. And I think there is lots of great work that's been done that probably is eligible for some request of, and I don't know what that amount is, but I would entertain a request. As far as the as-built is concerned, I'm not so much concerned about the run-out areas on the shoulder of the runway, on either side of that runway, because of, it's just topographically constrained. It's just where it is, and it's flat, so I'm not super concerned. But both ends where the lion's share of the work was, particularly was it 2, 3?
5 had the most work, yeah.
Yeah, it had the most work on the steep slope. That absolutely is something that's going to need to be memorialized, because inevitably, as federal regulations or state regulations change, then that's where you might see additional work in the future. We need to establish that baseline in a record, in a recorded basis. And we wouldn't have that if we were to relax it. So I think we are looking, at the very least, as-built of those run-out areas at the either end of the runway. And I have no idea what the value of a bond reduction might be. This was, part of this included some of the vegetation management, but most of this was strictly the safety improvements.
It was almost, this project was all safety improvements.
safety.
Correct. Yep.
Most of it.
I just wanted to check. Based on past history, if you're gonna go the route of a bond release, we never historically release more than half. So depending on what the commission decides, it'll be half or less, depending on what, I just wanna let you know. Yep.
Okay. I agree with Joe's discussion in total.
Which was built solidly upon the foundation that Al laid down.
Yes, exactly. So I will piggyback Al and Joe kind of like went a little bit further, and I agree with both of you.
His head's gonna get so big, he won't get out the door.
I couldn't agree more with what Deb just said. I think she said it better than Joe or Al. It was unbelievable, Deb, you're just so articulate, I don't know how you do it. But in addition to that, could you do an as-built right now of that stream? Is it in a condition, is it in its final stage?
Oh, yeah, all the components have been put in, it's just me. The contractor would gladly have removed those sandbags and dumped all the flow in that right away. I've done a few of these, and the more time I have to let those roots grow, the better I feel, the more comfortable it'll be a success. So it's all on my shoulders why that base flow is being diverted right now.
And that was a strategy during the permitting process. You pointed that out to us, and we agreed with it.
I did, and then we didn't have a good first planting of the first stakes and stickers, so we put new ones in last fall. And so I don't have even a full growing season on that, on the punch list shrub stakes and stickers. So again, this is my selfish nature, not wanting to ruin something just for the end of a funding cycle or something like that, which is what unfortunately these contracts come down to sometimes. So this is me holding that back at this point.
Okay, the current bond is $46,800 plus any interest that's accrued.
I'd like to talk more about what's done and what's not done.
Okay.
Because in order for us to accurately quantify what, if any, we want to give back, and I'm not saying we do, we always look at every aspect of the project and quantify it to a percentage completed and a value. I think we need to stick to that method. Otherwise, we're just making a swag, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
So within our jurisdiction.
But before we even get there, I mean, so can those as-built be completed at this point in time?
Yeah, during the project, we had full-time resident inspection. All our plans and the contractor's equipment was all GPS capable. They took our plans on a disc and loaded them into the bulldozer as soon as you go out of spec, even by 100th. And if you went back to those spot grade plans you saw on there, we're within a couple hundredths of an inch on every one of our bit of our pavement on this site. Those spot grades there show you that, a couple hundredths of an inch accuracy for all these areas. That actually goes over to the fill areas as well. As soon as that dozer wanders away from where it's supposed to be and wanders away from the grade it's supposed to be, everybody knows it. There's an alarm sensitivity, et cetera, et cetera. What we didn't do is take all the spot grades the resident engineer took with the contractor while they're doing layout and apply them to the base plan view of these as-builts. As soon as we got a task done and it was laid out properly and we did the post-construction inspection of that, we signed off on it and paid the contractor. That's how it goes. So all these, you're talking about different components of the site. Well, this really is different components. Each one is paid for separately. When they got the drainage system done, they received a check. When they got all the electric in the ground, they received a check. So they're all different components that we had to sign off on before we paid for them. The only thing, in my opinion, that is not substantially complete is that relocated stream channel. I think everything else is done, stabilized, and is going to be like it is in the field right now with no changes. Even if we get a hurricane here next summer, we are that stable out there. So I'm confident everything is done except for that relocated stream channel.
Jogging to follow up on what Sean's saying, would you consider the documents that we have to at least be an interim as-built? Or does it fall short of that?
I am very clear on what you guys want to see. I'm very clear that our current as-builts don't show that. To go from there, where they are right now, to here, what you actually want, is going to take me some time. But I think we have 80% of the shots you would need to generate that. I do think we would need to do a few more shots out in the field to tie it together. That's where I think we're at. And I think we would have to wait till June to do that fairly with snow off the ground, et cetera, et cetera.
Because that's when I would think.
That's where our confidence is built from one way or the other.
Well, that's when I would consider reducing a bond, is once that we have those as-bills. So the amounts, et cetera, in my mind, I mean, and Deb, you guys certainly correct me if you think that it should go in a different direction, but, I'd want these as-bills that Jen has requested here before we consider the bond release.
I mean, I would agree with you. I think the as-built are, the as-built are a big deal.
Okay.
They really are. We record drawings, we hold, every applicant that comes in front of us, we hold their feet to the fire for record drawings, because when the property changes hands or the owners want to do another project, we can go back to that record drawing and we know what was done, and we can validate and show why we gave a certificate. But you know, I'm still stuck on the stream, and I understand what you said, and I appreciate you're being careful with it, but that's the first, I think that's the first time we've allowed anything like that to ever take place in my tenure, and I've been around here a while. I had black hair when I started. So,
I remember that.
yeah, yeah.
We all do.
So, you know, that being said, that's a big deal. The stream relocation, it was, I think, controversial at best. I think you've done a great job, but it's a big deal. And you know, before I want to call that a home run, I want to really see the as-built and the stability and function and finality of the stream. But other aspects of the project, as-built aside, can you explain or articulate other aspects of the project that are 100% stable, that require nothing going forward?
I would go with the wetland replication area first, where we actually did provide 1 foot
Where is
spot
that?
grade contours.
The report's in there with all the photos.
So where on the
straight
map
through
would
to
that
this-
be?
That would be,
Off the
I'm looking at your Stantec map now.
It's not,
it's up at the north ramp area where all the north hangars are.
Okay. Yep.
They're up behind the north ramp hangars.
Yep.
And it was geez, was it 9,000 something square feet of wetland mitigation?
Yeah, I got it.
The slopes are stable, all the plantings have done really well. We have more groundwater and we know what to do with. 100%.
What percentage of the whole project was that replication area?
So, cost-wise, very small
Very small.
cost. Obviously, the pavement was the big ticket item here. That's where most of the money, and then we have,
You're saying as a percentage of the bond amount.
Yeah, in other words, if I'm looking at the bond and I'm looking at the project, and you're saying you want a portion of the bond back, and I'm saying, okay, I'm equating the bond to the project, and what portion, what percentage of that, you just identified the replication area. What percentage of the project was that replication area? Was it 5% of the project, 10%?
the entire project, it was less than 10% of the project.
Okay, so that's a good start. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Any place else you want to talk about?
All the pavement has been spot graded and deadly accurate. We reduced the width of the pavement, which is shown on those spot grades, and they're dead nuts accurate as well, the spot grades on the pavement. That you have in front of you, and that represents, you know, upwards of about 30 to 35% of the cost of the project was the pavement and the subbase itself that led to those grades. So, but the slopes, I don't have the as-built on them, so I didn't want.
I see what you're saying.
I guess what I'm saying, what do I have
I mean, from a
as-built of and what have been done
Yeah.
per the plans? The pavement and that wetland replication site are really the only two that I substantially have in front of you.
Too specific. I think generally,
I was just
when we put a bond, when we calculated the bond, we would look at those areas where activities were being proposed that were within our jurisdiction. And we would look at what those activities were, what they would cost to undertake, and what sort of contingency would we put in if something were to go wrong while those activities were being carried out. And that's how we established the bond. So it really, how much pavement cost might be is immaterial to our calculation of the bond. Narrowing of the runway and grinding out those run-out shoulder areas adjacent to a wetland is something we put a value on. That's done, it's stable. We've got spot grades. We could reduce that amount. I don't know what that amount is. The replication area is done. We would have put a value on that. We could put a consideration for reducing the bond on that amount, et cetera, et cetera. Everything within our jurisdictional area is what our bond would have been calculated on, which is why it's only 40-some-odd thousand.
But when considering a reduction, we often consider what it would cost to put it in the condition it needs to be in compliance if they walked away right now.
Yeah.
If I don't anticipate.
Including the survey.
But if
Including the survey.
if the airport all of a sudden tomorrow
Walked away.
walked away and we had to seize the bond and complete or stabilize the areas, what's it going to cost us?
And I think that would be the stream, and we were talking about that amount in the field. I think to do the work that's out there, if you had to hire a contractor to do that, it would be a $25K item for a contractor to come out there, move those sandbags around, and correct any small deficiencies that might occur out there. But the substantial base product out there is done. So,
Okay, so you had stated earlier, I feel like I'm giving you the third degree, and I don't mean to.
oh no, I've been here before.
Where this is a unit cost project, when White did the work.
Yeah.
They broke out various elements as a pay item. Was there a pay item to build the stream?
Yes, and I don't know what that, we did
Because
do
it's
that
that
as a
number
unit
plus a
cost.
contingency under, for escalators, that's,
Plus as-built.
plus the as, but that's our number to work with.
I can talk to Dave
So I
Rich
think we
about
can
that
continue
number.
this until they do that homework and come in as separately.
We actually have that bid number,
Yeah.
actually, from White, in
And I know you
in
travel
our
a great
books.
distance to get here. If we say you used to, you probably still do, right?
I still do.
And you could do that with Jen ahead of time, and, she can confer with us if that's something we could or should entertain, and if it is, then we'll schedule a meeting to come down and deal with it.
Okay, if it was done as a unit cost item, the stream relocation, I'll provide that paperwork to you, at least to get the discussion
Well,
started.
that wouldn't be the sole thing, but that's a big ticket item.
That is the big
Because
ticket
when you
item.
look at it, and you look at the sloping that takes place, I forget what percentage or degree the slope is.
We've
but
rip wrapped it, it's like 1-to-1. It's
Yeah,
steep,
it's wicked, and,
But it's stable and it's not moving.
well, it's been stable for how long?
3
It was finished at the beginning of last growing season, so only less than a year.
So it hasn't, it's been
year.
less than a year, Joe, and I'm not trying to knock it down, I'm just saying it hasn't been there a long time, and it hasn't been subjected to a real test with respect to the flow. You're still diverting, right?
The channel itself, yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't really seen we really don't know. We truly don't know. It sounds good, and it probably likely will work, but we don't know, so we have to use caution here, Randy, that's all.
All right.
Anybody have any thoughts? Are there any thoughts here?
And then we get all the way down to Doug.
Doug's waving me off.
Discussion on
Yeah, Doug's been waving me
it
off.
doesn't appear we're ready for certificate of compliance or anything else.
Gotcha. I hear him. I hear what he said, so it sounds like a continuance, Randy, if you want to.
And that's fine, I have an overall purpose, Mike has his yearly budget and provide his matching shares for MassDOT and FAA grants coming up, and I hope to be able to use some of this bond money for that.
Yeah.
Those grants are issued around May 30th, so I have some time to work here. If I can get anything for the Airport Commission,
Remember
I
that
certainly want to do it.
when you're talking to them, we're not being punitive.
No.
But our job is the town's interest, and the town's interest is to see it
When's our next meeting?
finished and stabilized, so 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
27th?
2 weeks.
To sort of put a cost to the as-built,
Yep.
to the stream, and to any sort of stabilization that you think sort of lies out there, and maybe break it down into a couple items for them to consider.
Okay.
Are you going to want to see how the stream works before you do your
yeah.
as-built? Or
Well-
what's the sequence in which that should happen?
So it has a
So-
geometry right now, and it's a finished geometry.
Yeah.
I'm worried that might wash away some of my shrub stakes and things like that before enough roots get in the ground. I have confidence in what's out there. I just don't want to give it a gully washer until I think it's
So that's
good
why,
and
that's
ready.
why I was asking about, that's why I asked him the question about what was done on the project that wouldn't be like, I understand what he's saying.
Yeah, no, I-
He's thinking that end might not be ready for even consideration, but what is ready for consideration is the replication area and some paving. So it sounds like there's a small percentage ready for consideration, maybe 10%.
So in procedure, we got a couple of things here. First of all, we have the request that's before us is a partial certificate of compliance. We can allow them to withdraw it without prejudice. And we can then continue discussion of bond reduction.
Yeah,
which
the bonds
really
are
is almost-
focused.
It's almost moot, because you're gonna come in and ask for a bond reduction separately.
Yeah, we're not selling the
If we
airport
could take-
property anytime soon, so the COC doesn't do a lot for us.
But
The bond certainly does.
You understand where
You'll
we're at,
withdraw
right?
it.
It's,
Yeah, we went over this quite a bit. I think I have a good target in mind as to what we'll need.
I mean, that's how we guarantee compliance.
Yeah.
We hold your money, so.
I still think more of it is ready for acceptance than 10%.
Okay.
But I'll
so-
prove my point, all
So right
right?
now, I'm at 10% in my
Yeah.
head.
And I want to be at 50.
Was that swag you were talking about?
You're an optimistic guy. And
I am.
that's, one of the things we like about you. You're an honest, optimistic man, so I guess we'll give you a couple weeks to get ready, right? You want 2 weeks?
Yeah, next
You don't
hearing.
need anything. At
Well-
this point, they've withdrawn the request for partial.
Yeah.
We don't have a bond reduction formally before us. You're just gonna come in and request.
Some
a
other
bond
business, but I want to provide the data under the other business that'll support my case.
So the next meeting is February
27.
27th,
Okay.
and I won't be at that meeting.
Good. I mean, that was a little bit of a slip, Al.
That was a Freudian slip, but that's okay. I take it as a compliment. I'll wear that with pride.
Badge of honor.
Question, Jen,
So we have nothing to
you
vote.
better check that meeting, because you might not have quorum.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure we have a quorum of without Lou.
I'm out of town that week,
Yeah.
just that week, so sorry.
We still have 4 sitting commissioners if they can all make it.
And I know what,
27th.
and I know what date I want to
27.
get together too. So at least if I get that in, the other commissioners can at least look at it and peruse it and talk about it a while,
All
so.
right, so you're requesting a continuance at this time?
I am.
Nothing before us. So moved.
Second.
No, what do we continue? Oh, yeah, we're not
They
doing anything.
They withdrew the bond request.
Request to withdraw.
Yeah, we're requesting the partial, so
Well,
it's
I
just,
think we can just continue, and in your letter, you can request a withdrawal of the PCOC, we can get your check back, and then you just request the bonds, so.
That's what I'll do.
We're not trying to hurt you, we're just trying to.
No, and a partial COC does us no good.
We
It's all about the
We
bond.
want to follow the correct procedure and want to be consistent with the way we handle this, so
Okay.
that's all we're trying to do.
I'm good.
All right,
Thank you very much.
You have to vote on the IDA.
say it again now?
No, we voted on the RDA, we need to vote
You have to vote on the
this
IDA.
continuance. We have a motion and a
The
second.
original IDA.
Okay, so we're back to the IDA. Joe?
No, we voted on the idea.
I think we did,
Yeah, voted.
Lou, I think we handled that. I think we're just at 1672, and I think the only thing at 1672 is we're changing it from a partial COC request to a request to reduce the bond, and he's got to file paperwork for that. So I think Joe's right, we don't have anything here, but you just get to go back to the drawing board.
All right.
And we'll thank you for coming in.
See you at the next one. Thank you.
All
You
right,
won't see Al, though.
I won't.
No. You'll miss him.
that.
you never know, Randy, Randy, you might not have a quorum for the next one until I get back, you never know.
Might snow too.
All right, so we're going to, I'm going to return the gavel back to Lou, since this should have eliminated the conflict.
Before we move forward anymore, are there any abutters to any of these applications?
Which applications?
Just that one, right?
Yeah,
Just
this
imagine-
gentleman spoke.
Well, I know we have,
We're continuing the middle school project, if anyone's here.
that's
for
what I'm
that.
saying, I don't want him to sit here.
That's the big one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you moved on to that one.
I
So,
moved over to
We
it.
didn't, just, I think he was worried someone's sitting here
I
for
don't want
that.
somebody to sit here. Are you here for the sports complex?
if anybody's here for the sports complex, it's not going to be heard tonight, we're going to continue it, if that's what you're here for.
Is that 495, Main?
I'm looking for,
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Yeah.
so 242-1746, 495 Main Street, Recreation Complex, is going to be continued to 227. If anybody's here for that, don't bother hanging around. If not, you're welcome to stay. All right, nope, I hear no response. Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, it's
Next
yours.
one is Boston State Forest Boardwalk Number 5, Friends of North Andover Trails.
Hello.
Hold on while Jen gets the,
No rush.
I don't remember if the map's in here. Oh,
Yeah, there is a map in the, towards the bottom. Liz, you can see Liz is very thorough with these things.
that's the location. Otherwise known as middle of the forest.
Middle of nowhere.
by the way, Jen, when you're assessing the 10 best for 2019, I want Randy's response as one of the 10 under consideration.
It's number one right now.
Right now, it's only February. We have a whole year to go. We do a 10 best every year, 10 best things that applicants have said or done during the proceedings, and Randy's response to good, when I told him I wouldn't be here, that's right up there. So-
I don't seem to have anything
That
other
was true,
than the
though.
RDA
Huh?
and those.
That was true.
Oh, he's a good guy, he's very honest.
Are you looking
Joe.
for the, it was the first map in there, just the location?
So
This is the application that we got, so you just want me to put up the location map?
Yeah, is that what were you looking for?
Oh, okay, I didn't know if
We're
there
on,
was something,
we're on Boston
something
State
more
Forest.
cohesive. This is
phone
fine to
app.
start. Is that good?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why I even bother.
I think it's all queued up, Mr.
Yep, just, all set?
Okay.
I guess it's not giving any more detail of the
Yeah, you know, you can just barely make.
Try
out
using,
this-
instead of like zooming with the trackpad, try the plus button.
That's what I use.
Oh, okay. Huh.
And sometimes I take a minute to, the other thing I can do is download it and see if it'll,
Not that I'm trying to, not listen to this applicant, but we pretty much approve these through an enforcement order, I believe. Correct, Jen?
no, this is in resource area, so they're definitely,
This has never been before us, Jen?
no.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess that's the confusion. I thought we had seen this too.
We did a project, it was a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, in the same area.
Same type of construction, or-
You're probably familiar with the map, and we're going to use the same construction as before.
That's what it is.
So that project was in that, that
The-
Wilmot
The
parcel.
action photos look familiar.
Yeah, I can't get it to show any better than that, so, sorry.
Well, I think they have it printed out, right?
They do.
So this is the,
So just give us your name for the record, that's all.
I'm Glenn Aspesley,
Okay,
and I'm working with the Friends of North Andover Trails on this project.
thank you.
And we have here, this should probably be the final boardwalk on this Bay Circuit Trail reroute that we did a couple years ago. We moved the Bay Circuit Trail off of Sharpness Pond Road and away from the missile site area where our signs wouldn't stay, where we put them. And we moved it now onto North Liberty Street and up into Middleton. And then it comes up through some Greenbelt property and some Richardson Farm property and up into Boxford State Forest that way. We knew going into this that it was a wet reroute. We didn't quite realize how wet. And we're working with DCR to grade part of it as a fire road. And then we're adding these 2 boardwalks. We added one about a year and a half ago. And this one will be the final one. As Jen said, it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And that's for that reason, we're going to be pre-building it off-site for the most part, and then bringing it in and putting the sleepers on the ground and just nailing it together.
The fact that they're in the resource area, believe it or not, doesn't always concern me that much, as long as they're doing it the right way. It's that careful balance between people understanding the value of what it is that we try to do, is to invite them out to and enjoy the things that we protect. And getting them out into these areas with minimizing impacts requires boardwalks sometimes. And I'm okay with it.
I have no questions.
Great.
I like the work so far, and I have no questions at this time.
Thank you.
I've never had any questions with you guys building trails, so.
I'm all set.
No questions.
Doug,
No questions.
motion?
Jen, what are you looking for in this motion?
Number 2, for work in resource area, they will be spanning the stream to the greatest extent possible. The stream's kind of a little meandering out there. It doesn't have a straight flow pattern, but, so they will be a number 2 for work in resource area, and we usually do, because we've already done the pre-construction, they bring me out there, everything's flagged, then we just do a post-construction afterwards. Our standard conditions are, no, everything brought in, excess must be taken out, and no cutting in the wetland.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Nice job.
Keep doing a good job. You guys
Thanks,
do
Glenn.
great. Next one is 2 Blueberry Hill Road, Lane, excuse me.
Good evening. My name is Sid Gellert. I'm the owner of 2 Blueberry Hill Lane.
So this came to us as a propane permit, a gas permit. Originally, the owners wanted to put the tanks on the side of the house. You can see the fireplace, the chimney butts out on the side of the house.
Yes.
That's where the propane company wanted to place the tanks. That's in your no disturbance zone, and I told them that they needed to consider alternatives. So they said they could bury a tank. I had to consult DigSafe just to make sure there weren't other utilities in the front yard that they were going to encounter, and they can put it in the, outside the 50-foot no-build zone. The only thing I would recommend is erosion control. Doesn't show on their plan, so they need some kind of compost or bark mulch sock when they're doing the installation. And other than that, just a post-construction inspection.
So Joe's going to be, I have no questions on this project.
I don't either.
No questions.
John?
No questions. Who performed the relocation? Did you help them do that?
Yeah, they,
Good, nice job. No questions.
Doug?
No questions.
Motion?
What are you looking for again?
negative number 3 with erosion controls and a post-construction.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, buddy.
I'll write that up and get that to you this week.
Motion is, we're gonna do both of them at the same time, because Mrs. Sullivan has someplace to go.
Okay.
It's 43 Scott Circle, an RDA, and 43 Scott Circle for enforcement order.
Okay.
Yeah. Doing them together is more about, I think some of this work should be improved under the negative determination, but some of it needs to continue to be part of the enforcement order. Oh, Gina, we need to remember to get these from Mr. Sid and ask him.
Okay, for the record, my name's Jack Sullivan, owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. We were before you on an enforcement order for this property. There was an expansion of the driveway. Crushed stone was brought in and expanded the driveway, and there was a steep slope coming off of that area. And the work, a lot of the work was within 50 feet of a wetland that is probably a vernal pool. The commission asked that we come back with some sort of plan. They wanted to see the slope placed at a 3-to-1 slope, loomed and seeded, some shrubs to be planted, and some wetland markers to be installed. So this plan shows how this will be done. Some of the stone will be allowed to stay outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, but the stone will be regraded to a 3-to-1 slope in that area as well. So you can see how we did this. Off of the driveway, there had always been some stone, but there was extra stone brought in. All that will be regraded, so a lot of the crushed stone will be removed from the site, at least to the 3-to-1 slope, loomed and seeded. A small boulder wall will be needed at the 25-foot line to the wetlands. It'll only be 1 to 2 feet high. And it's just a small portion of wall, but that will provide at least some sort of permanent line of delineation anyways where the 25-foot buffer zone would be. And we did file an after-the-fact RDA, and there was triple the fee for the after-the-fact filing. I'll turn it over to the commission for any questions they might have.
Joe?
I really don't have anything other than, if this were to come to us as an original filing, regrading of a yard up to the no disturb zone is something we would have considered and, permitted perhaps with certain conditions. So that's the after-the-fact aspect of it. It's certainly not a structure, but we also nowadays look at, trying to keep those driveways and walkways and appurtenances to the buildings and structures out of the 50. But that's just physically impossible here.
Right.
What you're saying is that because the improvements were already within the 50, that's why you're looking to
Right.
allow this to stay here and then just provide a level of protection up to the resource area itself, correct?
Correct. And I think the commission's big concern was it's a wetland, but it's probably a vernal pool. If it was, so with a vernal pool, there's stricter standards, and that's why I think there was a concern leaving just crushed stone in that area, and the slope was too steep. So you wanted to see something different in this case. But you can see a portion of the existing driveway is already within 50 feet. And then there was some discussion when this subdivision was permitted, you know, things got flipped around a lot. House locations got moved, septic system locations got moved. The driveway was tight when it was built. It's a problem for the homeowner now. So I think it's a solution to the problem. It's not ideal, but it's a solution.
I have no more questions.
What are you proposing for monumentation? Now, bear in mind, we're talking about a potential vernal pool. What do you have in mind?
It's really up to the commission.
Well, I understand. Do you have
yeah.
any ideas?
I didn't know if you just put the emblems that you typically place on trees, or if you wanted something more permanent, like,
Is it feasible to put a barrier up of some kind?
I think Jack has the wall where the work is you know, he has that 1 to 2 foot stone wall right at the point where where everything that's happened is closest to the wetland. He could extend that down to the length of the green, you know, to the left there.
Yep,
I think
I see it.
that might be a feasible thing to do.
I think that's what I'm asking. You know, where this is an after the fact and where we are retroactively protecting a vernal pool, why wouldn't we take the extra step to protect the vernal pool?
Yeah, I think that's a fine thing.
I'm not saying, I'm
Right.
not casting aspersions on this homeowner, but people move all the time. They sell things and they move, and the next homeowner might not understand what this homeowner went through.
Yep.
And that's why those permanent barriers are so important.
And it would extend sort of almost to the end of where you're proposing the restoration there.
I think that's a good comment. We're fine with that.
Yep.
We'd extend it and put up the emblems as well.
My only other concern with the restoration plan, you can see one of the emblems is actually in the no disturb. I think that's more of a sort of
I just
plan.
tried to attach it to a tree that was closest, but
Right, so if you have the wall, you could probably put them on the wall or on a post at the wall.
Yep.
But I think he should go with full height shrubs, not the dwarf stuff, because again, there was a big dumping issue when we arrived here too.
Okay.
So I think where you've proposed low bush and some sort of dwarf, I think just the high bush blueberry and the other, is it like cranberry, or I forget what else you proposed? High bush blueberry and, inkberry. So
Yeah.
just the full-size
The full
species
size.
would be the better species to have.
that would be fine.
More questions, Al?
No, not at this time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Manzi read my mind. I think we should do the wall along the whole restoration area.
On the 25, though,
At the
not
20
around the
At the
corner.
25,
Yeah.
at the 25. This way, we won't have any issues like this again. Not to say that this applicant would do it, but like Mr. Manzi said, it could be in the future. So, and I know my fellow commissioner will agree with me, because I know he'll want a wall also. Thank you. Deb?
I agree with you. Thanks.
No more questions.
How could I not agree with him after he said that? I agree with you.
Doug?
No comments.
No comments? Doug, no comments?
He's so excited about walls.
No independent thinking.
Doug, we value your independent thinking.
All right, so we get, we could do a motion, then we'll do you said the enforcement
So
authorization?
I guess I wanted them, but I would just recommend two separate motions. One is a negative number 3 for the work outside of the 50-foot no-build zone and the small portion of driveway being allowed to remain in the 50-foot no-build zone. And then an enforcement order requiring restoration of the 50-foot no-build zone, the wall and the plantings.
You want the restoration and the wall on an EO?
Right,
And you want the
restoration,
work
wall,
outside-
and,
You
yeah.
want the work outside of the resource area and driveway to be a negative?
And the
3.
small part we're going to allow to remain for safety reasons.
Can somebody just say so moved?
That works.
Okay,
Sean, do it.
so moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's Joe said you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was
That's the way to work,
Remember
Sean.
what I said?
absolutely streamlined.
You keep doing that, and one of these days, you'll be on the
Jamie's
hit
got
list
it.
for the airport, just like I am.
This is the independent thinking that I was talking about.
Yep, yep. We'll explain it to you later. There was- when you were on the lifeline conversation.
Let's see.
You'll be on the hit list for the airport.
Next one is 0 Great Pond Road, lot 3.
0 Great Point.
So we have a couple of issues with this. Did she send me the green cards, do you know?
I have the green cards. with me.
Okay, great. Ben and I went out to review the delineation twice last week when it was, 60 degrees, and we were unable to confirm the entire delineation. We were able to dig in some areas, but they weren't the areas that were sort of critical to this proposal. So there's that. And then I've asked a lot of questions of Libby, to which she didn't really provide any answers.
So I have some of those questions. I'm
Okay.
hoping to get an introduction in on the project
Yeah.
tonight.
Good.
Get some concerns. We do have to go in front of the planning board for watershed special permit, which we've applied for. So that's currently in process. I think we go back March 3rd.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tony Capichetti, 603, Hayes Engineering, 603 Salem Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts, for the record. There is some history with this project, so I'll try and be brief, but I do think it is important to give the commission the history, although many of you may have been here on the original filings. The parcel in question was divided into 4 lots back in '99, I believe, off of Great Pond Road. And then a common driveway was created. What I have up here is the original plan showing the original work proposed on Lot 3. Extent of wetlands, buffer zones. There's a fairly large house proposed. And much of the work was completed. We came back in 2002 with an as-built plan, which is shown on the second sheet. You can see on Lot 3, the gravel driveway area of disturbance going up to about the 100-foot buffer zone line. And then the project kind of died off at that point, at least for Lot 3. We came back in 2004, filed a request for determination of applicability, which we received. And the work, again, was never performed for this site. We have a new buyer, LRC Builders, who's looking to construct a approximately 1,700 square foot single-family house out here. And the application we have in front of you is for the construction of a crushed stone driveway in the same location where it was previously disturbed. We're not going any closer to the wetlands than what was previously permitted. The edge of disturbance actually, where we're showing the silt fence line by flag B12, B13, actually moves a little bit further away than what was originally permitted. Outside of the board's jurisdiction, we are providing some recharge for the roof runoff. We've provided calculations showing that the 100-year storm will recharge in the system. And essentially what we're looking for is utility construction in the driveway and the water service up the front of the lot. We try and respect the 50-foot and 25-foot buffer zones to the extent practicable, noting the previously disturbed areas that are inside that zone. There was some questions about potential alternatives to the driveway location. Again, we're trying to reuse what was previously disturbed. It is starting to fill back in with some smaller saplings and brush. We would look to clear that out. However, access to the parcel, we've been paying as part of a maintenance agreement to use the main driveway that was installed. We'd like to access off of the Great Pond Road driveway if possible. Let's see. We do stay out of the 25-foot no disturbance zone. We do have a small encroachment for reconstructing the driveway in the 50-foot no construct zone. There was a question about the monumentation of the 25-foot no disturb. What we'd like to do is put a fieldstone wall. It's not shown on the plan. It was something that was brought up by Jen. We'd like to put a fieldstone wall right where it hugs the 25-foot, and we'd be willing to extend that out to the 50-foot, which would kind of monument this area of the 50-foot as a no disturbance. in exchange for the previously disturbed area that we'd look to work in again, to reconstruct that driveway.
One way I think concerns is the lack of a certificate of compliance on the initial NOI.
So we've started pulling the paperwork together, and we are looking to file for at least a certificate of compliance for the previous work on Lot 3. The other lots, it makes it a little difficult for us to tie everything together because they're under separate ownerships, but at least for what's outstanding for Lot 3.
So the initial lot has a PCOC. It's just the last two lots. So I don't mean to tie up your project, and I'm not saying they won't entertain a PCOC, but it would really be nice to get this one off the books totally. So I don't know if there's any coordination that could be done.
I'm a little late into the game on this project, so I can see what we can do to coordinate with Lot 4. I don't think we're opposed to that. If it's something that we can do, we would have to get the other property owner's signature, and if they're not willing to give it, then we'd look to continue with the PCOC.
Okay, thanks.
No questions?
Well, the judge has hit on a lot of them. I think most of it's on procedure. I think there are permit validity dates established for a reason. I know you want to try to fit this into a previously approved permit, but I think, at the very beginning of everything, you need to take an action to close out the old order of conditions that's not fully constructed, from what I understand, not fully constructed. The situation is, I'm not sure this is an RDA. It's a new, and if it is an RDA, then my inclination is to call it a positive, because it isn't within resource areas and file a full-blown NOI. I don't see this as coming through, getting a permit under an RDA as the umbrella to cover it all. You apply for permits, you let them lapse, or don't move forward on them or complete them. Doesn't allow you to come back a long time later and say, I want to pick it up where I left off, and I just don't see that. So I don't want to throw a wet blanket on this party, but boy, oh boy, I just don't see this thing coming under old standards. I think we'd hold it to the current standards and the current regulations and the things that we've been doing, most recently in the tradition of this commission. So that's it. That's not specific to the project, that's just generally.
I have to agree. Not trying to pull the rug off on you, but this is not an IDA in my opinion. This is an NOI. I'm looking at the photographs of the old driveway and the utilities, and I'm looking at the tree growth in the area. That's not just a couple of shrubs. They've been growing for a while.
Probably 14 years if I...
Yeah, I was going to say 10 years anyway. I think that takes it off the bubble, honestly. I'm not saying it's not permittable, I'm just saying this really needs the scrutiny that an NOI would receive. You may, at the end of the day, get everything you want, and I'm not saying you wouldn't, but I think we need that level of planning and protection for this project. So I would vote to make it a positive when called.
Okay, I'm agreeing with my fellow commissioners, this should be an NOI. Is this the original developer, developing this lot, or is this another one?
I believe it's a new developer. I apologize, I was kind of thrust into this project this morning.
That's an issue there, so now you're trying to build a house on somebody else's permit. So now I know it's an NOI. Secondly, you said you had to go in front of planning for common driveway?
No, we have the common driveway permitted, watershed special permit. This ultimately discharges to Lake Cochituate.
They gave you, the common driveway was permitted 14, would you say 14 years ago?
Oh, longer than that, 20 years ago now. 1999 was the
Yeah, well, I think you
common
might have an
driveway.
issue with that when you go in front of planning, but that's here nor there.
Just to be clear about the thinking, this was permitted under an RDA once before,
In
correct?
2004, that's correct.
Yeah, so that was where we had that conversation early on, and I don't know what the circumstances are. I only pulled the old NOI. And I do agree with the commission that, that on that slope, that's a lot of work for them to be permitting under an RDA. I kind of thought the story that, like I said, we didn't pull the RDA. We only pulled the NOI. But then Libby pointed out to me that there had been a prior RDA on this filing, so, but I don't know what the circumstances were. I'd have to pull that file.
It doesn't matter to me.
I understand.
You know, I appreciate the history, and I do,
Yeah.
but when I look at the scope of work here, you try to put that under an RDA, I'd be right behind you looking for an RDA just as big.
I had mentioned to them too that, you know, I think if the driveway is allowed to remain in this location, there needs to be some stormwater management of that slope, you know, whether it's pitched to a swale or something. I think I had mentioned that to Libby, just because I think the erosive potential on that is pretty
And
high.
While I do have the commission's ear, maybe I did hear that it is going to be a pervious driveway the whole way. What I've done on other pervious driveways that are crushed stone is pitch it to one side, and in conjunction in constructing this pervious driveway, overdig by about 2 feet on the side of the driveway to create an infiltration trench that runs along the side of the driveway that you're pitching it to. Is that something that the commission would entertain as
So we'd want to promote as much infiltration as we can, or as you can, and we would also want to be very cognizant to the steepness of that trench, and we'd have to, depending how steep it is, maybe the necessity to put check dams in.
Yeah,
That just doesn't become a swale.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is we'll usually throw some kitty litter, which is just bentonite clay, to kind of create some 6-inch dams down at the bottom as it's flowing.
Well, you might have to actually put some check dams, and you'd have to look at the rate of flow, the volume, and where it's going to end up. Is it going to wash out? What's going to happen with it? I mean, you know that.
So, yes, we do the calculations. I usually size the trench to handle the 100-year storm off of the change in curve number.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that you're on point. That's the kind of stuff we definitely would look for.
No, it may not be completely compliant with the stormwater handbook as far as what's going on, you know, as far as a BMP, but again, this is pervious, semi-pervious surface, being a crushed stone drive and outside of the stormwater standards. That's the only
As
reason why I
long as you
asked.
don't trigger stormwater, it's something that you and Jen could work on for.
All right. No, I appreciate you considering. So.
Well, like I said, the RDA is good, so you're gonna have to file for an NOI. I think you are. Also, you better throw out that common drive on the planning board, because I'm not sure how long ago they stopped allowing common drives.
I know the planning board's researching it, but I think it's already all accepted.
Yeah,
That's my understanding from Gene.
Well, for the record, I don't object to a common drive. I think sometimes they're in our best interest, because they will expose less resource area. I'm not speaking against that, but I'm
There's a
just
bridge
talking
out
about-
here.
I'm looking at the totality of the project when I look at it, and just the conversation we're having about having a construct a swale with check dams to collect the flow. I mean, there's a lot here that is just beyond the scope that an RDA can handle. Even if you go by the handbook, the RDA, 3 conditions is the max you can get, and this just needs more scrutiny, that's all.
Mention fact, it's
I'm sorry?
an application from somebody that used to have an application, that had it permitted.
What,
I don't even want to dwell on that.
yeah, I'm
The
not.
common driveway,
But I mean, that's not,
there's a house beyond this that the common driveway is
know.
already constructed
Number
for.
4.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, so the common driveway's a
We're not-
done deal. It's there, it exists.
we're not
yeah.
debating that, Jen. We're looking at how to.
I do think it could use a certificate of compliance, though. That's why I was looking, I mean, we should be closing this whole thing out, not just a lot that.
personally,
That's number one. I mean, regardless of which vehicle this ultimately comes before us, we really can't consider anything with an open order condition, especially one that's that old.
No, no.
But we can, there's a way to complete that. There's a
All
way,
right.
there's absolutely a way administratively they can handle.
To Mass DOT, taking them close out projects.
So they can close it out. They
Yeah,
can
we have
close
no
out and file
objection
another
to-
one. That's within your purview. You can do that. You can absolutely do that. You just gotta do a little more homework, that's
Yeah,
all.
we'll file for certificate of compliance.
Yeah,
Again, if I can't get signatures for the land that we're not in control of, we'd look to just do a partial for Lot 3, but we'll do our best to close the entire.
just work with Jen.
Yep.
You know, that's my best advice to you is if
I
you
know a
work.
lot of it's already been done through the subdivision process.
Yes,
They had a
that's-
lot of information in their file, probably less than we had.
There might be a lot already done for you.
Yeah, no, it's-
Yeah.
Deb? Sean?
So what is there? Is there one order of conditions for the all lots?
All the lots, yep.
So there's no separate orders for each of the subdivided lots. So you really can't do a PCOC. I mean, they've got to close out the whole
Well,
thing.
technically, they could, I guess.
Not
why I'm-
finished, right?
Why I'm not proposing that happen is there's a first lot that was already a house that existed, that had the land that created this. There's a second, the next one in on the common drive has a PCOC, so they're out of it. Now there are 2 lots left, and so if we let this one go, it leaves the whole bag in the hands of the guy at the end, which I wouldn't want to see
So we're not
happen.
gonna I don't want to suppose, but this is not a simple process. I mean, so we're assuming it's built in compliance. If it's not built in compliance, what the heck, you know, who the heck do we hold responsible to bring it into compliance at the risk of considering what happens on lot 3? I think this could be a mess.
So we're not there
Is
yet.
it
Yeah.
We're
still
not
a
there yet.
valid order of conditions?
No.
No,
No,
long since expired.
long time
So-
gone.
Then he's gonna have to get a new order of conditions for any new construction.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
Right.
On this lot.
We want an NOI with a new order.
I was trying to
Now,
speak
they
to Sean's
created these
concern.
rat tail lots,
I think this
or
could
rat neck lots, whatever you wanna call
be
them.
muddy.
Yep.
Those things have been extinct, not
No pun
extinct, but done away with by planning boards a long time ago.
Yeah.
They stopped allowing those things.
This was the entire.
So I don't want to speculate as to what they have by record and what they don't. I don't know this, I think this is complicated, but I think we got to look at it as a notice.
Well,
Burden's not on us, the burden's on them
Yeah,
to
yeah.
show us an as-built that
We can do everything we can to
that's
help them.
capable of getting a certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
If they can get that, then the problem goes away. And then they just file separately for this lot.
Well, he has to. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Request to continue to 227.
So that as-built, or that request for certificate of compliance would be that the project wasn't completed as designed, right? I mean, to close it out, that's what they need to do.
Well, it partially was completed, wasn't it?
But that's one of the boxes on the form,
I think they can get a full and
right?
final certificate of compliance. It would, somewhere on that certificate of compliance, it would just say that lot 3 was never developed.
And so what's, just so we all don't lose sight of what's happening, what's before us is an RDA request for Lot 3. And, you know, if I were going to offer a motion, I would move for a positive determination on that, which would trigger then the NOI.
I think we do that tonight. Is
And,
that a motion?
I'm offering that motion that
Second.
this be considered a
Okay, we
positive.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous.
So,
Time out. Before we vote it, on reconsideration, did we just approve a line by issuing a positive? Did we just approve a wetland line?
No,
No.
you just said, no, I can write, I'll write.
Okay,
out
write it the right way.
What you're,
yeah, one second, we will absolutely take your question. We just have to, we got to follow, we go clockwise.
well, you were voting, so I think that maybe.
Yeah, so what I'm looking for is offering a motion for positive is to trigger an NOI on the site. That's my goal.
So, it's been a while since we've issued the positives.
So
I have to
before we-
look at- I have to
before
look
we
at the
close
form
this
again.
out-
Maybe you can take a butter input and I'll look at the form.
All right, would you like to come up to the table and address it? We just need you to tell us your name and address and ask away.
Alexander Stupnitsky, 855 Great Pond Road. Actually, I'm living as a corner lot, so the construction will be done just next to me. It might be not related to wetlands, but
Which lot would be yours, sir?
let
Is
me
he in
see.
lot one?
I believe. Right on the corner of, so this is,
Do you come out on Great Pond?
this is
It's up here.
oh, so you're lot 4?
It's all the way at the end.
So if I can get your information afterwards too.
All right, gotcha, thanks. Now we know where you are.
Yeah, because I will be using the road, and when construction will be done, so we do a lot of commute every day, because me and my wife are physicians, so we on call, so really would like this road to be clear all the time, very much, if construction would happen. That's basically which concerns me the most.
So what we've been debating is mostly on procedure. So what we've just said, what was likely to happen is they have to do some paperwork to satisfy the concerns for what was already there. But as they come in and propose what they're going to do on Lot 3, they're going to make a separate filing subject to Lot 3, at which point you're gonna get another notice in the mail, and you need to come to another meeting, and at that point, we're gonna talk specifically what they're proposing to do, and what your concerns are, and what others might be concerned about, and we'll try to put that all into a permit in the end. So, right now, we're hearing you've got a concern, but I'm just saying, don't lose, this isn't the end of this procedure. There'll be another hearing under a separate notice you'll get.
My understanding is what you want is access during construction.
Yes.
That sounds easy.
Yeah. Well,
And, yeah.
it's easy to understand.
No, they can't.
Yeah.
We can defer to our keen legal minds
Yeah.
down here, but
So
where he's
there is-
an established resident during construction, they would have to guarantee him access.
Yeah, there is
They
also
couldn't-
the
they couldn't-
problem.
They couldn't bar him in or out of his house during construction.
I mean, people can do whatever they want to do, but certainly I think you'd have a lot of rights to
So,
prevent them
So-
from doing so.
Yeah.
two items that, we have no plan. This section's built in.
Yeah.
We're tying in from the edge of that. And the utility's already, the reason we're coming in with the water where it is, it's already stubbed out under the road, so we wouldn't be excavating in the main driveway. But what I would like to ask the commission is, if you could kind of support me in, this gentleman owns Lot 4, so he'll be critical in getting the certificate of compliance done for us, because he's one of the outstanding lots, but just reinforcing how much of a benefit having a certificate of compliance is for the homeowner.
Sir, what was your address again? 865?
855.
855,
Yeah,
got it.
855.
855, got
It's
it.
lot 4.
We let the science drive the project. Give us the information that you know we need to vote.
Well, he needs, in order, that's separate. Your lot doesn't have a certificate of compliance either. You're part of this subdivision, and your lot hasn't been approved, like, signed off on by the town.
I don't know those details, frankly.
Yeah.
Cannot answer those.
Right, so what Mr. Capichetti is saying is that in order to close this project out and move on to being able to do additional work on your property, if you don't have a certificate of compliance, you can't get additional permits to do work. You can't sell your house because more than likely the restriction that this order of conditions puts on your house wouldn't allow for someone to get a mortgage. There's a lot of reasons to close it out and be done with it, so I think that's what Mr. Capichetti's hoping. When he comes to talk to you about it, you'll be supportive, and I
But he's
think.
just telling us he doesn't want to be blocked out of his property.
Right.
I understand exactly what he's
Right,
asking.
but I think if, under a
No,
notice
I
of intent.
understand. Yeah, it's a very good point, actually.
Right, and I think under the notice of intent, you would require them to have construction access, a stockpile area, all those things.
Oh, yes.
So, any other questions?
Yes, and basically, it might be not related to this, but I contact town several times. So when common driveway opens into the Great Pond Road, on the left, there is a big kind of rock, and really there is no visibility. So it will be so many houses, so my car already was several times about to get into accident. So it will be a lot of traffic now. So should be also something done, either this hill should be kind of chopped or put some kind of sign 10 miles, because somebody will die one day. And actually, I tried to reach town, just didn't have time, but I sent few emails, I called police, but
So that sounds like something that could be proposed
didn't
in the
receive, yeah,
notice
so
of intent.
maybe.
Totally.
We can take a look at it.
Totally different,
Way
correct?
out here.
That's,
I think it might be worth discussing with the planning board. That may be
That's-
something that they can
So-
bring
gonna solve
about.
that.
yeah, after this
That's
meeting,
the next
I'll
step.
get his information, and I'll work with
See,
him.
that's exactly what we're telling you. You got to get all that stuff solved
Yep. No, it's,
before you come back. We can help you, but you got to get it done.
I completely understand, and I appreciate all the input that
So,
that was.
just looking at the form, this is a positive number 3 and a positive number 5. I'm sorry, positive number 4 and a positive number 5 for work in the buffer zone requiring a notice of intent under both the act and the local bylaw.
So that was my motion.
But not approving any resource area.
That's a whole separate, okay, yeah, so we can also check 2B, the boundaries of resource areas listed below are not confirmed.
That's what we
So
want.
That's it, that's
2B, 4, and 5.
So we already had a motion, that was under reconsideration, so with those provisos put in, just gotta, I don't change my vote.
Pardon me?
I don't change my vote with all that added into
The
the.
goal, and the intent of the motion was to require the notice of intent.
checking of those blocks is very important.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, coincide.
As they say, make it happen.
He has to refile.
Now, hold on, we still
Yep,
have a
I have
gentleman.
Al and Joe.
So we still have a gentleman asking questions.
I know, so I'm gonna back
Yeah,
up.
I am very much all set. Thank
You're
you
very much. Okay.
Okay. Also, he's gonna refile for an NOI. He's gonna
I
talk
don't know what
to,
is it NOI.
that's a notice of intent that he's gonna build.
Okay.
And then we can have some conditions. One of them is that the roadway, you'll have some conversation with him anyways.
Sure, I appreciate
But he needs
it.
your signature. And also, he's gotta go in front of planning because it's watershed. It would do you best to attend those meetings also,
Sure,
right?
Sure, I'm sure we'll be seeing you again.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, are we all set with the?
we're good, we're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, I appreciate
it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman. We're dragging along here.
I'm gone. We're gonna pick up the pace.
We're dragging the anchor, Mr. Chairman.
ANRAD for Zero Turnpike continued to February 27th.
Jen, you want these?
There's a lot of information that, in his new filing that I forwarded to all of you, he wants to know if you would like to do a site visit out there at Zero Turnpike.
Personally, myself, I would say no, myself, only because I'm familiar with the site, and I don't want to look.
I never want to deny myself the opportunity to become smarter.
I'd do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if I'm able to, I would go, sure.
Okay, so maybe next week sometime after 5 o'clock? We have more daylight these days.
Okay.
I have a meeting Thursday night next week.
I'm leaving on the last Sunday of the month. So this coming week, can you just give me some, when you have a chance, when you're setting it up, just give me a call?
I'll send a poll out, you know,
Just because I still have to go to work every day.
Mondays,
You have to work.
I don't have one of those nice no-show jobs yet. I'm really working on it, but, you know.
I almost did something selfish to Jen. I said Monday's a holiday.
See you on TV.
So Monday's a holiday,
I
so,
don't have to join you. No walking without me.
no, we're gonna want you to be there, so. We want to all walk through the mud together.
All right, you guys are gonna handle that.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. Be a field trip, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so did we continue? Do we have a motion yet? We have a motion, Dad.
For what? What do you
Move
need?
to
To
continue.
continue.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Beautiful.
Next one is an ANRAD for 320 Campbell Road. That was when we got.
So, we got it, we were waiting for a DEP file number, and when Ben was reviewing the plan, he noted that the applicant had left, we had revised wetland flags, and they had left the old wetland flags kind of floating out in the wetland, so those have been removed. Did you give them all a copy of the ORAD that I wrote, that I had stuck in here? Okay, so you have a copy of my ORAD. You had asked for some special conditions in there stating that the pond that they label and associate with a buffer zone clearly has not been delineated and is not confirmed. The ORAD is a written document.
There it is.
Right here?
Yep.
We had it earlier.
That's the.
I also noted in there, because there is an open order of conditions on this property, that no new notice would be considered unless they close that out. I don't think they necessarily have to close out the order to get an ORAD, but they have to close out the order to get a new order. So, just so it didn't fall through the cracks on any future filing, I listed that as well, if that's adequate.
Because Mr. Lynch and
That's
myself
right here,
thought that it could be future developed because it's a big piece of land.
There you go. Way to
So
work.
that's why we wanted that language in. All right, so
So it would be
Motion to
a motion to approve the delineation as shown on the plan dated February 12, 2019, with the language discussed in that.
With the language attached there too?
Yes.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm gonna just get the continuances out that way.
You get two.
495 Main Street, request to continue to February 27th. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And 242-1745, 350 Winthrop Ave, request to continue to March 13th. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Okay, we have, and the other one for North Andover is to continue too, right? Did I see that somewhere?
Yeah, 0639 Osgood Street at Holt Road wants to continue. Actually, there's two of them.
That's Mass DOT.
Talking about the NOI?
There's two.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Two
No,
four-
430 isn't continued.
There are not?
No.
430's open.
Okay, 242-1749, 430 Osgood Street.
So this was the one that we couldn't get a file number out of DEP for the continuation of the Mills to Hills Trail that the town is constructing. This is the section that passes outside the high school fence.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We need, there was an alternatives analysis, which basically was either build the trail or don't build the trail, because there's only like this much room on the other side of the high school fence. So it has a stormwater O&M plan associated with it, just for any erosion or anything that could possibly develop. It does request waivers, because the high school fields are within all the subzones already as approved, so this isn't anything new, but, so it needs the waivers voted, but I think we reviewed it pretty adequately the last time you were here. TEC prepared the plans, did the stormwater analysis.
Any questions, Joe?
I have no questions.
Al?
We're waiting on the DEP, or you eventually got that?
We were waiting on the DEP file number. We went like 2 months without it, so.
But we now have it.
We now have
Any
it.
questions, Al?
I have no questions.
Deb?
No question.
Sean? Nope. Doug? Okay, we need a approval of the waiver.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You-
None. There were none
And then
opposed.
I know,
issue,
I'm
I haven't
just-
drafted
I'm
this,
like,
so it'd just
what?
be to close in
Are you
issue in
ill?
21 days.
You're not building anything.
Wow, we gotta write that down. Make a note, Jamie, that Mr. McDonough approved the waiver.
Might have been maybe 6 to 8 years since the last one.
I can't even remember.
It's getting cold down in hell, isn't it?
Next one is, the complex is continuing.
We didn't vote that one, by the way. We need to close an issue in
Oh,
21
I'm
days.
sorry.
Which one?
The high
I
school
thought we did.
path. We voted the waivers, but we didn't
Oh, I'm sorry.
close an
You
issue.
need a motion to close an
Motion to-
issue on 1749?
Yes.
You have it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Sorry, Jen.
Okay.
We're having too much
Yeah,
fun
it's
with
crossing the
Mr.
Ts.
McDonough.
You know, that's why we got Jen over there.
Got all thrown off.
That's why she gets the big bucks.
Yeah, I'm not used to that. 242-1747, 42 Vets Way.
So at the last meeting, I think we more or less approved the plan. We did vote the waivers on this one. And we asked for a revised plan that showed some increased plant density in the buffer zone restoration area. And I believe Lou had asked that they do more monumentation along the side of the driveway and along the back of the lot. So that has been added. So this is, if there aren't any other concerns, ready to close an issue.
So,
No questions.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Next one, now we get general business.
General business.
We already did that one. DOT, both of them, continue to,
Yeah, we have an OOC extension request for Bacon Joy, 351 Willow Street.
okay, well, let's get the airport ones out of the way. Excuse me, the 495 ones. Motion to continue to 227.
So moved.
Which one are we continuing?
Both of them, both DOTs.
1632 and
1632 and 0639.
Second on both motions.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And what'd you say about Muffin?
242, I think we skipped over it. It's on the prior, it's above the airport,
They just want an extension request.
1 year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And last, 1820.
1382.
242-1382 COC request for 1820 Turnpike Street.
This is the one we asked him to install the fence prior, I mean, we're working on the COC, but he had the propane tank, and we issued the enforcement order to install the fence. Ground's been pretty rock solid, so he's hoping to get that done this weekend. We'll see. So motion to continue
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
to
and that's
227.
unanimous.
Sorry.
Last one is, next one, I should say, 242 1655 COC request, Wellington Way.
Can we just table that for a second? 'Cause
Hold on, I gotta recuse.
Yeah,
Let me-
and Greg is coming, so can we just table that for now until he
The
gets here?
Wellington Way?
Do you want to wait, Bob,
Just
for
table
Greg?
Wellington Way, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Enforcement orders, 116 Marble Ridge Road.
Oh, yeah, did you give Amy a copy of that, or no, it's in the file, right?
Where is the EO?
So this was permitted quite some time ago. This was a renovation of an existing house. And there was an order of conditions. All the work was done. The no disturbance wall was built, the house was renovated, there was an addition, and then the house was sold without a certificate of compliance. Recently, the homeowner who's in front of you came in to request a generator permit, and just sort of looking, I always look at the aerials, and having been intimately involved with the construction on this site, I noticed that there's a very large patio out there now that wasn't there when it was constructed. Oh, okay, yep, thank you. So he put the dimensions of the patio onto the existing, the as-built plan that we have, so you can see. My concern in,
26 by 24. 26 by 24.
I didn't want to offer advice as to whether this was after the fact permitting or an enforcement order, and until you saw where it was located in relation to what's out there. It is in the no-build zone. It is adjacent to the existing garage. So there is structure already in the no-build zone.
Yeah.
The homeowners,
Looking at the 2014 aerial, the 2017 aerial,
yep,
and I think I just saw a sketch.
a sketch of the
Right on
patio, yep.
table. So the aerial photograph seems to suggest there's something behind, not only left to the left of, but behind the garage. Actually, I'm having trouble interpreting the photograph.
Yeah, I
One
don't-
is
I don't think so.
very bare and the other one's vegetated, but I'm just trying to get a bearing of what I'm looking at here. Give a minute to look
Yeah.
at what I'm looking at? And I could be wrong picking a feature as my benchmark. So if in 14, if that was the cupola or the middle of the garage, is that not that same cupola? And if it is, if that's the ridge line, is this not the garage, which means we have a structure, we have a patio behind and to the right of it?
I can show them what, you didn't happen to, no, I think that's something different.
Something different?
Yeah, do you know what that little white thing is there? Could be a deck chair, for all I know. They're trying to compare, the cupola here, but I think that's it, isn't it?
That is one that was put on, the other one was put on that.
Something on the patio.
Yeah, I mean, right there, we have a table and chair set. And
Okay,
it could be, the umbrella was up that day perhaps?
So this is the cupola, and this is the cupola.
Okay,
So this is
this is the patio,
the patio.
which extends beyond the back of the garage. Okay, got it.
I think it extends right to the edge. I think you're.
Well, he's drawing it correctly.
Yeah,
Extends beyond.
Beyond the
Yeah,
garage,
okay.
yes.
I was just trying to match the photograph to the sketch. Thank you.
so the homeowner came right in when he was made aware of and has been very cooperative in working with us to come to some resolution.
So,
Want to understand, this came in as
yeah, I'm trying.
generator permit application request. So it was in the review of the generator permit.
The generator is all signed off on and
That's
ready to
fine,
go.
but this was when it was discovered and how it was discovered, okay. Do we know, Jen, do you have a feel for how far off that wetland flag A5, the patio area
Well, I think you
is?
can just sort of look at the 50-foot and the depth of that patio. I'm guessing it's maybe 15 feet from it, 10 feet from it. The no-build zone, how far into the no-build zone you are, how far you are away from the patio is from this no disturbance line.
So from here, the farthest out it goes to here, I would say this is probably 7 feet, 6, 7 feet.
So the one-story garage already
Existed.
existed and it already protrudes into the no-build.
The original house is quite old, right?
It is, I want to say 1924?
Yeah, so it predates anything that would have said you couldn't get it that close. So the garage was there. And I'm not taking any exception to that.
No, I was just using that as actually a point in favor.
Yeah, the resources over here.
Yeah.
But again,
This one, it's gotta be this way.
yeah.
We did remove some asphalt from the driveway too and created that planting area next to the garage.
We did.
There, if you notice too, one of the positives to the work that was done is there's an area of asphalt that was removed adjacent to the garage and made pervious.
Yeah, I see that, okay.
Yeah.
What's going on where the wall is open and leads out back? What's going on?
There's a
back there?
vernal pool back there.
Yeah, but what, is there any activity back there?
No, that was a
Is there
plant,
any
that was
dump-
an area to be, that was restored as part of the order of conditions.
So that's been restored? That's already been restored?
There were trees planted. That's what I'm saying, this wasn't
4 of
closed
them,
out, and
yeah.
I'm not really sure why. There was very little that wasn't sort of done as part of the process.
So do we have a physical barrier? Is that what I'm seeing with
That's
this
a
wall?
physical barrier. You allowed that, I actually permitted this when I worked in consulting. So you allowed that gap in the wall.
If we
So
did.
again, if someone came in and requested to build a patio, we would have to consider whether it was a structure or landscaping. And back in the era, I probably would have considered it landscaping, and maybe even still today. But we would want to have a physical barrier. So what I'm seeing with the wall being there, it is a physical barrier, isn't it?
Well, you would have made him do an alternatives analysis for certain to say that, I mean, there isn't a lot of this parcel that's sort of available for
So
a patio.
Perhaps we should have an alternatives analysis.
Well, I guess that, what I wanted to make sure, I mean, if you're gonna require him to remediate any portion of that patio, I wanted him to know. And if you're going to allow him to keep it, I wanted to know by what process you wanted that to happen.
Well, look, I think historically, we always try to help residents when they come in here, so as I always say, help me help you, show me how I can not make you take it down. Help me do that.
Yeah, and that's certainly what I want to do. I mean, just, you could probably tell pretty easily just by looking at this, there's not a lot of good options. I would have preferred to have a patio right off the back of my house. It would have been nice, but just how the driveway situation is, it's just not practical to put one there because then the cars wouldn't be parked in the driveway. So this was really kind of what we thought at the time was the best place to put it. And certainly if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken different steps, but I would never have in a million years thought that just putting a patio in a patch of grass would have had to go through this. I mean, certainly I saw the wall, the posts clearly marked conservation, but I had no concept of buffers and no builds.
Describe the patio to me. What's it made out of?
So the initial retaining wall that you see here that continues off the first garage and then kind of stops, it used to just stop and then it just sloped into grass. So they continued that same style, like it's loose fieldstone, built it all the way around and connected it over to the other garage. And then from there, it's just flat concrete pavers on it.
Concrete pavers?
Yep.
So when the rain falls on it, the rain just soaks into the grooves between the pavers?
It does. I mean, he has it pitched slightly so the water doesn't pool, on top of the patio. So, I mean, it does run, some of it does run off the back, but I mean, if you look at it, you'd swear it was just flat.
It's just it's a family patio. It's nothing.
That's it. There's 2 chairs, a table and chairs, and a grill and a couple potted plants.
And on May 3rd, 2017, a partially open umbrella.
And a partially open umbrella. It was probably hot that day. There's not a lot of shade on that patio. It's one downside.
So we got a barrier around the patio itself. We also have a physical barrier in the stone wall to the resource area, is what I'm hearing. We have both, right?
Yes.
I think I'm okay with what's out there, and I'm not even sure we need an alternatives analysis other than looking at what we have from a plan. So then your question is, what vehicle do we use to allow it?
I would encourage the alternatives analysis because you've required it of people placing generators and things, so I think that's important. But you've permitted, if you're going to allow it to remain, it would be an after-the-fact RDA.
Well, let's go down the table.
Can we do an alternatives analysis under an RDA? Sure we can, right?
Yeah, no, we have one,
Sure we
the
can.
reason I'm pointing it out is we have one coming to us on the next agenda for 422 Waverly that you and I went to, so.
Yes, exactly. Let's go.
I'm all set.
Let's go down. I have no, I think with an with a valid alternatives analysis submitted, I think that would have been a permittable project had it been applied for. That's just me. I think that if that came in front of us and all the boxes were checked and everything was done, I'd have probably voted for it, most likely.
I would have too, but I might not have. But it's an after the fact, so I'll agree with Jen, and after the fact, RDA, will an alternatives analysis.
Yeah, let's see what let's see.
I agree.
I agree that alternatives analysis is the right step to do at this point, but whether or not I would have voted for this in the first place or will approve any waiver isn't ripe for discussion yet. So one thing at a time.
Waivers in one
Agreed,
meeting, are you
let's
kidding?
let's get the.
Independent.
Fine, just go with it. Give them the,
So we're trying.
it's gonna end up getting approved, so
So here's
get
the
it
thing,
done.
here's the thing, we're trying to make everything consistent.
All right, so if we go the road of an
That's all.
RDA.
We're trying to
I
do
did
that,
this.
Doug,
If
we
we go
really
the road
are.
of an RDA, we can accept information for an alternatives analysis, that's just data we collect and put it to the record. Is it the right vehicle to grant a waiver to the 50-foot no disturb under what clearly is a permitted, or an NOI type of activity? Again, it's a patio, it's not a building or a house, so I think it's an IDA.
It would have been
I think it's an
It's an
IDA.
IDA all the way. No matter what, it's an IDA.
I think it's an IDA too.
Okay, so,
I'm agreeing with that. I think with a valid alternatives analysis in front of us, we could then consider a retro filing for an IDA.
so I
We can
think
get
the way to go about that is to issue an EO requiring him to file an after-the-fact RDA. And that documents what he needs to do to bring this into compliance.
Beautiful.
Couldn't have said it any better.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say
I
So
can help you
Jen,
with that after-the-fact filing.
Yeah, because you're talking out of my league here.
Yeah, everything you've seen before you tonight are filings, so you're just gonna come back and present this as if it were a project. There are
Okay.
some penalty fees associated with that, but nothing horrendous. Overly horrendous.
Okay,
Just stay in touch with Jen.
I will. Thank you so much.
That's it.
Thank you.
We'll see you back again, likely, maybe not, I don't know, but
Okay, very good, thank you.
I just want to say one thing, it's that, I think we're traumatizing our new employee, our new assistant, Ben, because we're all over the place, and Mr. McDonough never
Oh, you
approves
introduced him to
waivers,
the family.
and he did tonight.
Listen.
So I just want to let you know that
For non-structure.
these meetings
I
don't
also promised him
usually...
it would be over by 9:30, so.
Oh, we're getting there.
listen, it's just baptism by fire. Just go with it, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just, sometimes we just do that. And it's not even a full moon.
I'm gonna recuse myself, I know what's coming up next, and
understand.
16:55, I'm gonna leave the room for that.
Okay.
And you can send the
16:55,
messenger when it's all set.
COC request for Wellington Way.
Thank you for going really slow tonight, to allow me time to get here.
We're having fun for a change.
It's his fault, Ben.
So, Greg Hockmuth from Williams and Sparagus, here presenting the developer. A certificate of compliance request was submitted for the Wellington Woods subdivision project. Portions of that project fell within the commission's jurisdiction. It received an order of conditions, and as such, it's done, hence the COC request. But there are two outstanding issues that we need to talk about. One of them is condition 50 of the order of conditions, and I can read it real quick. It says, prior to construction or when seasonally appropriate and prior to requesting a certificate of compliance, all ephemeral pools on site shall be evaluated for certification as vernal pools under the criteria established by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. Those found to meet this criteria shall be certified with the Natural Heritage Program. So it's pretty clear, that condition, on what was required. So what Mr. Messina did after receiving his order of conditions and after the project started, he contracted with Steve Erickson from Norse Environmental to evaluate the areas in question and to gather data, if the data was there, to be able to certify any and all ephemeral pools as certified vernal pools. Mr. Erickson submitted a letter to the commission in May of 2016, which basically says that he went out on 2 different occasions. He didn't find much. And at the end of his letter, he says, ultimately, though, I could not verify that any of the ephemeral pools contained vernal pool species. And then he said, this also does not prove that they are not vernal pools. It simply means that on the dates of my site visits, there were no amphibians or observable vernal pool species. And in his defense, it was kind of a tricky year to look at vernal pools. For whatever reason, it just was. So I don't fault him for saying that, but because he said that, he kind of left the door open. But Mr. Messina thought that he had complied with that condition. He hired somebody, they went out, looked, didn't find anything, he thought he was done. But when the COC came in, after reading this letter, Jennifer brought up a good point. Well, you know, they may need another look. So what Mr. Messina did is he asked us to put together a proposal to go out and look at the areas this spring, which we did, and he contracted with us to do so. We fully intend to do that. But he's really trying hard to get on the docket for this town meeting for street acceptance. And having a certificate of compliance from this commission is very important for that process. There was another area too that got loamed late in the season. It didn't have time to grow. It's very small, but that is within your jurisdiction. So the vernal pool issue and that area that just needs to grow are lingering. But we're hoping that this commission will still move forward with the issuance of a certificate of compliance, whether it's holding money back or whatever needs to happen so that he can move forward with street acceptance. He spoke with the planning board. Well, it's my understanding he spoke with the planning board, town engineer, and DPW, and it appears that everybody's satisfied. There was a change that was made to some of the drainage out there. Some chambers were put in lieu of whatever the prior BMP was. They were oversized, and it's my understanding that they're working well and that the engineer is satisfied. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be here for the Ray Street project. So if the grass doesn't grow, we know where to find him, and we can put down some more loam and seed if need be. And typically, we instruct clients that they can't get a COC until everything's done and everything's in compliance. But this is kind of unique. So we wanted to come and talk about it.
So I understand everything you're asking, but I'm not sure I understand the sequence or the timing. So to get a subdivision accepted, it requires several actions, ultimately culminating in a vote of town meeting to accept the roadway.
That's right.
To get to that point, you need a vote of the Board of Selectmen to get it on the warrant and it be on the warrant. But the ultimate vote and the ultimate recommendation is made from the floor of town meeting. Unless, of course, the selectmen or any other board wants to stop it because it's not ready. So I'm not sure I understand why it is you can't go through the process of getting it on the warrant, getting it to the floor of town meeting, and have the Conservation Commission, prior to the date of town meeting, stand up and say, an order of conditions was issued on May 2nd, whatever the date is, whatever the magic date is, when you are ready for it. Because I think anything short of that, and again, it's good faith, and we know that the applicant, and we know his great track record in getting things done for us. It's just simply not ready for us to grant a certificate of compliance now, because it's not ready. But that's not saying that it won't be. I mean, do we even know where it is with regards to the town meeting warrant?
Yeah, so we had a conversation with the planning director today, and she didn't, I mean, I'm all for getting this closed out and whatever process. I'm even fine if we look at vernal pools. I'd rather we look at vernal pools when it's an appropriate time than try to rush that process just to be on the town meeting warrant. I do know that, just having gone through this with Great Lake Lane last year, that before this gets on the town meeting warrant, they're gonna want us to have issued a COC. Do I think we need to?
Not necessary, but that's what they,
Right,
that's what
but
tradition and
but
town
do
requires.
when I talked with Jean today, did we need to rush that process? Jean encouraged them to just keep moving forward with everything you just said, you know, getting the votes that they need, getting on the warrant, all those things. And when it's pertinent that we have the COC, that, you know, at that point we can evaluate, you know, has there been time to do the things, or are we really at the point now that we just, you know, everybody else has signed off on it and all we're holding up is for vernal pools? And I'm fine with the contract and the whole arrangement. I just don't think we have to do it right this second based on all the other things that are still going on.
Say contract and whole arrangement.
For the vernal pool certification
Oh, yeah.
process, like if that's the only thing that holds up the certificate of compliance.
Compliant in every other way.
Right,
What's that got to do with the construction of the road? The road being built properly according to town standards.
So if history teaches the town a lesson, Foxwoods?
Yeah.
Fox Hill? Yeah, Foxwoods. The steep hill going up. That there were a whole bunch of things on that development that everybody was trying to work towards achieving and navigating that very difficult path to street acceptance. And from the floor of town meeting, it was a mess because they weren't ready. And again, completely different animal. This developer's compliant, I think, from our perspective, in every other way. But what we had was a bond on that project held by the planning board and a bond held by us. And there was a cooperative agreement to share those bonds to get things done. And in the end, we got an accepted subdivision, but nothing was ever done.
There was enough money.
Well, there's enough money to get it done. So the reason why I think the selectmen have made, I'm guessing, is why they've recoiled a little bit and said, hey, never again are we gonna let that happen. We want all the ducks in a row ahead of time. By law, they don't have to. But they've chosen to follow that, if that's the
Well,
case.
they actually have, the planning board has, for street acceptance, there is actually a list of documents, and I think Mr. Messina can attest, one of them is that he has his certificate of compliance. I think it's on that checklist, right, of things that have to be had. So
By way of policy or by way of regulation?
Regulation.
Regulation?
Yeah,
So they might have tightened it up by regulation.
right, but, I mean, again, that's local, that
Yeah.
isn't maybe statewide. All I'm saying is that the town engineer did say in his email to me today that he has been monitoring this and believes it is currently functioning. The basin in the cul-de-sac was only put in the fall, I don't know the exact date, but, you know, he did say he wanted to see it in that email, you know, operating come spring. Again, I think if everybody's on board about the little things that are on, what I would hate to see is the commission sign off on it, and then there be all these other things that then follow, that somehow influence what, you know, that we've closed it out.
So what's your recommendation?
You want,
Just for them to continue in, I'm not, again, there are minor things in our jurisdiction that are at issue. If you want to close it out, you can close it out. I would just.
Just asking you what your recommendation is.
Right, that we just give it, I mean, it might make it to the point where we get grass growing out there and the stabilization is no longer an issue. The town engineer may look at all the plans and certify that it's 100, but there's 7,000 plus square feet of additional impervious on the site,
6,700.
6,700, so.
I talked to Mr. Borghese today, he's not comfortable with until we go to one season.
Right. He did say he thought it was fine and it is functioning. The neighbors have had some issues on their lots, and but I think everything's stabilized now and not an issue.
Well, Greg, this isn't your first rodeo. You know that normally COCs are granted based on everything being done. And right now, there's probably half a dozen things. I believe the rain gardens, are not, which I'm not a big fan of,
It's not
They
a
haven't
rain
gone
garden,
through
it's an infiltration basin.
infiltration basin. They started with rain garden, right?
No,
No, I
Wasn't
think
it?
it was an
Wasn't it?
infiltration
Wasn't it?
basin.
Anyways,
It's my understanding it's just the vernal pool issue and then a small, very small area that
Well,
just
I'm
hasn't
looking
grown.
I'm
The
looking
whole
at,
entrance isn't stabilized, right when you come in on the left in front of the basin is all disturbed, at least
Yeah.
last time I was out there.
I saw that, and the silt fence is still up.
No, silt
I mean, I
fence
know
is
it's a
out.
Nope, that's
small
been
check.
removed. That's been
Erosion
removed.
control's out.
Yeah,
Oh, it is-
Mr. Messina had
it is
people out there for a few
Yeah.
days pulling it all out.
Um,
There was a lot of it.
But, like I said, I am, if everything is done, then I would be willing to do agree on a COC.
I think
After the
regulations
fact-
are regulations, they're not our regulations, they're the planning boards.
Right.
But I see no harm, given the minor nature of our stuff, to make a I mean, if the finance committee and the board of selectmen can vote to make their recommendation at town meeting, it says it right in the warrant sometimes, to be made at town meeting. I see no harm in the Conservation Commission issuing a letter at town meeting saying the certificate of compliance has been issued, or hasn't been. I see no harm in that. Now, again, it's not my regulation or this commission's regulation, it's the planning board's. If it's on a form that's a check box that says you must, I'm not about to waive their regulation, but I'm also not about to consider issuing a certificate of compliance when it's not in compliance.
Deb?
I agree with Joseph.
Sean?
I do agree that, I can see why it is important to everybody to try to get this done right now. But I do feel like we would abdicate our responsibility a little bit if we, at this point in time, issued a certificate of compliance, because it isn't in compliance.
Doug?
Well, it seems to me he doesn't qualify for a certificate of compliance at this time, so we can't grant one. Now, his issues relative to the policies of the planning board and what have you, relative to certain documents being in order before they will grant their approval, that's between him and the planning board.
And there's one last thing I said it earlier, I think, but I'll say it again to be certain it's clear. And I have great faith in the presenter, in the developer, that they will carry it out, but we can't play favorites as we move forward, because we get on a real slippery slope that we'll never get off. And I hate to say that, as much as I know this is gonna come out fine, I'm not sure it can happen in time, within the time that they need it.
Wouldn't you imply, would take into consideration that we even like Greg? So,
Well, that's my personal opinion.
Like I said, Ben, it's a full moon.
I do think, I completely respect the commission's take on this, but I do think technically he complied with the vernal pool condition, technically. He did hire somebody that looked at it, they didn't find anything.
Exception to the, except for.
The problem is, the individual he hired was on the fence and refused to get off the fence.
Now, what if I go out and look this spring and I don't find anything?
Then you say that, I didn't find anything, period. Done and over with.
but what was the condition, Link? What was the?
You don't say, well, we'll go back again in another year to see if I can find
I'll read
something.
it. I'll read it.
Bring some animals in and put
Prior
them in there.
Prior to
Because that's what I
construction,
wanna
or
find.
when seasonably
That's ridiculous.
appropriate, and prior to requesting a certificate of compliance, all ephemeral pools on site shall be evaluated for certification as vernal pools under the established criteria by National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. Those found to meet the criteria shall be certified with an HESP.
So that does assume some
Technically,
determination.
they surveyed the pools, they didn't find anything that could certify.
And that's
the
Greg's
pools.
position, that they're in compliance.
So therefore, they're in compliance, and they should just make that statement.
Yeah.
But,
Except that document that would close that door completely and say it's done. He said, except that, now I'm paraphrasing, of course, except because of erratic weather conditions, I'm unable to make the determination they still might be ephemeral pools.
and he went out in April.
Then what you
and
do is,
May.
when that guy tells you that, says, you're fired, I'm getting another guy in here.
I guess where I was going with that is.
But Bob, but the applicant read that and read most of all the language and says that I'm in compliance. Again, I'm not gonna put thoughts into in my mind of what he might be thinking, but, you know, if he's not in the business we're in, he might think he got his check mark on that order, or that condition.
That was the case here. Otherwise, he would have hired somebody 2017, 2018. And that would still leave the unstable area that still needs to grow. But if that was the only thing lingering, I think the reality is, before May town meeting, I think Jennifer's right, we could have some grass out there and enough to come back and get a COC.
When's the warrant close?
That's what I'm saying. I'm all, you know, if we're down to the wire and this thing isn't going to get on the town meeting warrant because we're waiting on vernal pools and a little bit of grass to grow, then...
If those are the only two things and the grass grows,
Well,
I'm considering him in compliance.
what happened out on, it got to be like March, when we were doing Great Lake Lane, and he just went out and sodded some areas just to get stabilization around stormwater structures, I think was the big one. I'm just saying there are solutions, but what I didn't want this commission to do is to be put into that situation when there's still time. Like, the decision doesn't, Gene assured Mr. Messina today that he should get his street acceptance documents in minus the COC, and the COC, there will be a stop-dead date by which he needs it by, and we can evaluate what the situation is out there at that time and determine what the best steps are to move this thing forward to allow for street acceptance. But I don't think the street acceptance process should drive your need to issue a certificate of compliance, was how I was thinking.
We've been debating 15 minutes.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
You wanted a discussion, right?
Yep. And we,
2 weeks, and then we'll just go as it goes, and if there comes a point where it's critical, then we'll decide what the next step is.
great. Thank you for your time.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, next unanimous.
One recusal.
Oh, yeah, one recusal. Mr. Manson.
Mr. Mayor.
We gotta bring him back in.
So 422 needs to, the enforcement order needs to continue.
You have anything highlighted? Motion to the second?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Say aye. Say aye. That's unanimous.
And then we just have the one decision to be reviewed.
Just vote. We did the decision already. Too slow.
I thought this would have been over when I came back.
We're trying.
Who's dragging it, Doug?
Yeah, it's Doug's fault.
Doug, you're dragging the heck out of you.
I know it's not me, because she
Ben's dragging it.
he hasn't kicked me once.
Jen promised Ben 9:30. We have 3 minutes, I guess?
Let's go.
What do we,
Yep,
what's
3
up?
minutes.
I don't
Let's
want-
move on.
I don't want Jamie yelling at me. Where'd she go? Taking a nap?
Which one are we on?
Jamie never
I don't know.
takes
She's-
that.
No, Jen.
Yeah.
Where's Jen?
I'm here.
Okay.
She-
We lost her.
So that,
We already did that. We did that. We did it.
You're still on air.
Interesting dialogue.
That's why we did.
Oh, you've seen nothing yet.
We did that's why.
No, we have the order.
Yeah, this.
Doug, I asked if somebody seconded it, you said yes.
We voted, but we didn't review the order. We always do that at the
Voted to
end.
close, yeah, you just gotta do it.
yeah,
It's been so long since we've issued anything.
That was the continue on.
yes, that was the continued something else.
422 Waverly, we continued.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I forgot about that.
Okay.
I lost my paper. You're gonna fight me.
Yeah,
Here, take mine. I got it here. Put it right. Let's go. No,
So how did you
That's-
describe on the
that's my
finding of
decision.
fact, all the waivers and because they didn't get any closer than the old stuff?
I think I put that into condition 20, demolition of an existing sunroom, deck, patio, and associated pavement, and construction of an in-law addition 12 by 52 in the footprint of the demolished structures.
Okay.
I forgot First page.
What condition was that?
It's in number 20, the very first one.
They didn't know print, this page is missing.
Work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland, and waivers have been granted for work in the 25-foot no disturbance zone and 50-foot no build zone to the extent that work is no closer than existing construction. Permanent monumentation is required.
We have that.
All in condition 20. Joe asked me where it was that we documented why this was allowed.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
We're good.
acknowledged.
Questions, Joe?
Oh, that's perfect.
Al?
No, no questions on that.
Deb?
No questions.
Sean?
The mitigation is conditioned in number 36, which is their variable with no disturbance buffer zone. That will be monumented and monitored for 2 full years. Although it is a fairly small buffer zone, we don't have to monitor it for 2 years, in my opinion. We could probably go with 1 full year through the winter kind of thing. This project isn't going to take 2 full years to construct, so 2 years of monitoring on a buffer zone restoration of a couple hundred square feet might be a little overkill.
Neighborhood of Deer will eat for 6 months.
Yes, it's gonna get wiped out.
So you want to go 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, sticking with 2 years.
Wait a minute, we haven't finished yet.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
No,
Who says we're done?
She asked if you had any questions, you said no.
fantastic.
So there's a $2,000 bond. They have to give us the foundation as built, and then it's all our standard, you know, no fertilizer, leaf dumping, blah, blah, blah. I did include that, you know, none of the fill should be recycled, should all be natural material.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty important.
Yep.
That's probably the most important thing. That has to become a standard boilerplate.
It is, I've changed our boilerplate conditions. I've also required, as part of the as-built plan, that the no
Not-
disturbance
not ground
zone
glass
should
or
be
plastic.
monumented
Of
on
course.
the
Or
as-built.
corks, or straws, or stirrers, or diapers.
Razors.
Okay, now I'm done. Done talking to myself.
All right, I need a motion to approve the decision. Yeah, you,
Make a motion to approve DEP file number 2421747, 42 Bestway, as written and amended.
Well done. Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Motions to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
That's it. It's a wrap.
Sorry, Gene.